2, 1. What the fuck is up?
What's going on?
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you as well.
I'm glad that we're going to sit down and do this.
Yeah, me too. It's definitely something that I've been looking forward to.
So I've seen you obviously at the open mics and shit, and I I can't remember if it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago at Echoes, and you just at least from what I had seen, completely changed the way that you're doing your stand-up.
Yeah.
Because they're usually kind of quiet, unassuming, dry delivery, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a way to do it. Well, cheers. It's good to see you. It's very good to see you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But it's very like borderline Norm Macdonald style.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
very like dry, very quiet. But the punchlines, like they're like actual punches, right? Like they're actually like they're very isolated for like an island, right?
Yeah.
And that's one way to do it. But then you decided to go like full fucking Sam Kinison and just start fucking screaming.
That's fair.
And I don't think anyone was expecting it, because especially at Echoes, I've the few times that I've been there, and this is not a slight, but it is a crowd. Like, there is a crowd of comics that always routinely go to Echoes.
Oh, absolutely.
I've noticed that. So I think it's sick. And I'm sure the owner loves that too.
Oh, yeah.
But I think this is maybe like the third or fourth time I've seen you do stand-up. When you started fucking yelling, like half the room that was either like looking at their notes or they're drinking their beer. They're like, I mean, you've been to enough open mics. People are there, but they're like not there sometimes.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, they're talking about the joke that they just heard or someone else's joke. It's always wild.
So then you start fucking screaming, and people are like, "The fuck? Who the fuck is that?"
Yeah,
and it worked, dude. Like, and what stuck with me, and I think this was the intention, was the end of it, because not to give it all away, but you're talking about your father.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, it's like, they, who the fuck are, like, that end of it, like, that was fucking awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
That was like I am not the comedy guru by any means. I'm not the bastion of what's
Me neither,
funny.
yeah.
But for the love of God, lean into that. Like, that is so fucking ridiculous.
You. Yeah.
How long you been doing stand up for?
Since May of this year. Yeah.
So you're brand new.
Like 6-7 months, maybe. If that.
What gave you the courage to get up and try it?
It's something that I've been wanting to do, and I felt like my friends at the time really saw me being less creative. And I'm a creative human being. I've always been. Yeah. And so they were seeing me be less creative, and they were like, "Why don't you want to go do something?" Like, and it was like, I haven't found what I'm feeling, because I used to be in music. So I used to play the drums, the guitar. You know, I've traveled the country doing that stuff, taking pictures and videos, and the pandemic happened, and I just kind of lost my way. I was feeling really burnt out by all of those things, and my friends saw me want to be something and do something, and I was starting to talk about comedy and how I've been really enjoying it, and I've been finding more queer comics online, and they were like, "Let's go do it then. I'll take you to an open mic. I will watch you do it."
Nice.
And so that kind of happened, and it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I would always like tell my friends, like, "I'm gonna be a stand-up. I'm gonna be a stand-up comic," and they were like, "You were the least funny person I know." Like, all of the time. It's
You've got some very honest friends, which is a good asset to have.
Oh yeah. I mean I really appreciate that, and like even one of my like earliest jokes that I've brought into my set comes back from that time, and I would tell this joke all the time and people would not like it, and it was like never funny to them, and obviously they cared about me and like what I was talking about, but I don't know, it's just always something that I really enjoyed. I would love just sitting there for hours watching stand up. Yeah. And yeah, it finally hit me, and I was like, I have to do it. Like, I was so tired of feeling like I can't, like telling myself I can't do something. And so I finally started to be like, no, I can do everything I told myself I couldn't do. And that includes comedy, that includes writing, that includes acting, all of these things that I feel like I've always wanted to do, but I always told myself that I wasn't ready for.
Which is fair. I mean, starting any like entertainment endeavor is a challenge, like, in of itself. How long let's talk about music then for a second. Traveling are you originally from Albuquerque?
So yeah, I grew up in the East Mountains. So I'm from New Mexico. Yeah, so like 16, I moved down to Albuquerque, and since then I'd been playing music.
When did you? Okay, so music at 16. Were you? Because you said you moved out at 16. Did you like emancipate yourself?
No, so my family moved. So my parents were having like
The podcast is sponsored by the amazing people over at Chop Chili Company. If you've been a listener to the podcast for a while, you know that I love these guys and they're amazing chili. And right now they are running a special offer exclusive to the listeners of this podcast. Go online to chopchilico.com and use code OnlyKings at checkout, and not only will you receive 25% off your entire order, you will also get a free cookbook based on Hatch chili recipes free at checkout. Like I said, go to chopchilico.com and use code OnlyKings at checkout, and not only will you receive 25% off your order, you will also get a free cookbook to go with your chili. They are also in stores across New Mexico at stores such as Albertsons, John Brooks, Lowe's, and a bunch more in cities such as Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Tucumcari, Las Vegas, Roswell, Ruidoso, and even Hobbs, New Mexico. And for our listeners in El Paso, Texas, we are in your supermarkets as well. Like I said, go to chopchilico.com, use code OnlyKings at checkout for 25% off and a free cookbook. Now back to the podcast.
Love problems or whatever you want to call it. So they were like, we're moving. My mom was like, I'm moving into town. We're getting ready to leave. And so we kind of did that. And then I just started to see more people every week, right? There was more things happening.
And what year is this?
This is 2000, I'm going to say 13.
Okay.
Yeah, 2013. We moved down. I finished high school, or I dropped out of high school. I got my GED, and then I was like, well, I have an opportunity to travel. Yeah. I was playing drums for a band, and we were like, let's get on the road. And so we started doing that. And then I saw a need for here in the scene for someone to take pictures and someone to document what was happening. I know that there was a lot of people wanting that to happen and trying their hardest, but they were already doing so much. And so I felt like I could step out of my comfort zone and learn a new thing. And that ended up being something that I did everywhere, right? I kind of started doing it in town, and then bands would come in. I would take pictures of them. They would go back to their home state. And then once I felt like I was ready and my skill was well enough, I started hitting up bands. I was like, hey, can I take pictures of you? I'll do it for free.
Nice.
I was literally, which is the worst idea. I mean, don't tell anybody that you're going to do it for free.
So there's the obvious train of thought that's, hey, if you're good, I mean, it's the Joker quote, right? If you're good at something, do it for free. But then at the same time, I mean, if you're a low-level creator, you're just starting out, trying to get your foot in the door, to kind of build up your bones a little bit, and you're gonna, especially for photography, I would imagine at face value, you just need to build your portfolio anyway.
Yeah.
So any opportunity that you get, especially if they're more like action shots, like if these people are performing live, why not? You know what I mean? That is a way to approach it.
Absolutely. And it worked, right? People were like, oh, you'll do it for free?
Yeah.
And obviously every time that I did tell somebody that, I would end up getting paid. I mean, I would go on the road and they'd be like, here's $50 for food that day. And it would kind of just be a continual thing. There's a couple bands from here that I did, like Lucia or like David Morales and stuff like that, like wonderful people. I like miss doing that for sure. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of music for me, I feel like, for a long time.
So you moved out at 16, or moved when you were 16.
Albuquerque.
Right, yeah, when you're 16, you get your GED. And you viewed that as a liberating thing. Has that always been the mindset? Like, oh, this is a new opportunity. This is not a new opportunity rather than a situation or a circumstance?
I try to look at that way. I mean, I was ready to move out of the East Mountains. I was sick and tired of just being in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing to do. I mean, I'm like turning like I'm a teenager. I'm like, I gotta do something. I gotta meet people, or I'm gonna just feel reclused for the rest of my life. And that was my big worry. And so I kind of was like, as soon as they were like, we're moving, I was like, finally, I can do that. And I remember like the first year here that I got my driver's license around that time as well, I would just drive everywhere. I mean, I just wanted to know what the city was. It was like my big move to the big city. And obviously Albuquerque's very, very small.
Well, I mean, everything's relative, but yeah, after about a week, I was in that same spot when because I started driving when I was 15. Mm-hmm. First car, I think I was like 17. Maybe 17 going 18, around there. And yeah, I remember when I was 15 years old, I had that same thought. I was like, okay, my mom's let me borrow the car for like a night or two because it's summer and I have to go. And like 99% of the time, it was you use the car to go to work and back. Like no bullshit, no shenanigans. And then the 1% of the time it was just a rarity. But I remember taking like the extra fucking long way home just so I could see what is going on. Because up until that point, even like in the small amount of time that I was spending here in Albuquerque, in my high school years, I mean, I was kind of just home the whole time because I went to a military school and a boarding school, right? So anyway, I remember just trying to take the scenic route, trying to take a little extra time and like this, that, and the other. And I was like, man, like, I hope Albuquerque gets better by the time that I grow up because there is nothing going on right now. And, you know, it is what it is. I don't hate the place, but I'm ready to move out too. I'm ready to get the fuck out of here. When did you take your first road gig?
My first road gig would have probably been, I would say, like early 2016. It was with a local band, and I was like, let me film a music video for you on the road. Like, we'll pick one of the songs, and then I'll just do a bunch of live clips, and we'll put it all together and make a really fun video of it. And then they were like, sounds good. And I remember they rented a truck. They rented like a Ford F-150. And when you're the photographer, like sometimes they'll take care of you, but most of the time you get the worst seat in the van. You get the worst. I had like the middle, and I remember like sleeping on the like middle console in the front seat and just being like, and having like sleep paralysis like half the time because you'd wake up and you'd be like,
yeah. I'm surprised they didn't just strap you down to the bed.
I know. I was like, I could have had more room at least, you know? Like, and I loved them for that, and I had no complaints at the time, but yeah, you would like go with bands and you would see who's like the princess of the band and like what guy got like the back seat of the van, and so they could lay down and no one else got that, and we'd all be like in the like captain chairs, and it was wonderful. But yeah, I think 2016 would have been the first time that I.
Where did you go with them?
We went to Texas. We went to Dallas, Denton, Fort Worth area. We played this venue called Killer Tacos, and it was
nice.
Honestly, some of the best tacos in Texas. I mean, like really, like Texas food kind of sucks unless you're like towards the border of Mexico or like specific
or like
places.
Austin,
yeah, I mean, Austin is great. I mean, I would love to like actually spend some time there. And now, especially with comedy, like really like blowing up there, I feel like it'd be a really great opportunity just to be there for a little bit.
Yep. I mean, fuck. Zach was just there. Josh was just there. And Zach went on at the mothership. He got on the fucking open mic and he got on at the mothership. Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, Zach and Josh are just killers.
Yeah, they're monsters anyway.
Yeah, so. I mean, they're just so good at what they do, and they really do care about this. And you can tell that, like, you know, I'm definitely even seeing kind of the way that I thought like they were gonna be like these tough guys, but they're just awkward like I am, and they're just like pet teddy bears. But I mean, they both have great smiles too, which is like I feel like if you're a comic and you have a bad smile, you're done. You can't like unless you're making jokes about your bad smile. Gotta have a good smile to be in comedy.
That's funny. So you taking that first gig. So now you're finally going to a place outside of Albuquerque. Was that a bit of a culture shock to you? Because I mean, Dallas-Fort Worth is not a huge place, but it's more of a like college town. It's more of a like livelier place in comparison.
I mean, I did some traveling while I was in the cult.
Nice.
So I grew up in a cult. I was in there for a while, so we do a lot of like mission trips.
In a cult,
yes,
like CULT cult.
Yeah,
okay.
cult.
Let's talk about that.
That's
Christ. Okay, so how old were you when you got started? Let's put it that way.
So started in the cult was from I think I was just about to turn 12 up until 18. And I was there for 7 years, I guess.
It sounds like a backward, like a backbone to a religion joke, but it was a real cult.
No, it's a real cult. I mean, definitely believe that they could like heal the dead. They could heal the sick. It's called, the church here is called New Life City in Albuquerque. You may have heard of it, you may have not. And then
I hate pulling out my phone, but like, fuck. Okay. Continue.
So they would believe all of these things, but they had like there was like a sister church to like the mother church, which is Global Awakening, and this is just a group of people. I mean, it's really tied into like colonialism and like a lot of what that is. Like now that I'm learning about those things, you know, just like being like, oh my god, like to participate in that. But yeah, no, grew up in a cult. They could heal the dead. I have a couple jokes about it where I'm talking about like there was this one time. We were in Brazil. So I've been outside of the country a couple times with this, but we were in Brazil and we were all trying to pray so hard for gold dust to manifest from our hands and diamonds to like come from our hands. Because they would tell us
when you're within New Life.
Yeah. This was we were going with Global Awakening to Brazil. We were in Curitiba, and that was absolutely wild. And like it's such a like mental fuckery too when it comes to that stuff. Like I mean, it's so emotionally involved that, like, if you are someone that was, like, lacking socialness, which I was at that time, right? I'm growing up in the mountains. I don't
You're
have a lot
12
of...
years old.
Yeah, right? So it was just like, and they cared about us. They were like, you're kids. The kids are the future. Like, the kids can do all the crazy things. And so we were there praying for people, like, laying hands on people, like, trying to tell the future about, like, their thing. And
Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
And let's table the you say Cuba was your trip?
Curitiba, Brazil.
Brazil. Sorry, I don't know why the fuck I thought Cuba. Okay, so
no
Brazil.
worries.
Let's table that. You start at 12 years old. How is this brought to you?
So my mom was dealing with, from what I think, it's like the beginning stages of her lung cancer that she never took care of, and then also the beginning stages of her like rheumatoid arthritis. So she was like dealing with all these health issues, and she was like, how do I get rid of them without taking all of these medications, without all of these like, side effects? She was also so worried about the side effects of these medications that would have ended up helping her probably live longer. And she wanted something different. She wanted something different than medication, and she found a church that was proclaiming that they could heal people from AIDS. They could, cancer would go away. Like, things like that would just, like, miracles, right? It was like a miracle to her, and that was really invoking it. It invoked something in her, and I was like, she felt so happy that she finally found something that was not medication that she thought could help.
And then what was because I just looked like a very brief thing on them when I was looking them up.
Mm-hmm.
What was the basis of their, let's say, like, how do I put this? What is the starting foundation of their religious philosophy? Like, did they start off from Christianity? Was it Buddhism?
It was Christianity, yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of the basis off of Christianity, non-denominational though. So it was kind of like they wanted everybody to be there,
Right.
But no, they're kind of like their slogan was anything that Jesus did, you could do better.
Oh, jeez.
Because there's a Bible verse where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and it's like, yeah, I've done all these miracles, I've done all these things, and you will do better. And so that was kind of their like,
so
we know now.
And that's what concerns me about the more modern churches for sure. Because I myself, being a Christian, I would like to think that I have common sense, and I have the ability to say, hey, something like you just said, right? To any sensible person, if God is telling you that you're going to move forward and do better or like do good things in the world, he's probably talking in a metaphor, man. He's probably using a metaphor, just like the rest of the Bible, full of metaphors. And if you are going under the assumption or the belief that it's God's word, that means the dude loves metaphors. He loves symbolism, allegories. So it sounds like they were, that's the actual term for it. It's like Christian Science. Is the faith like nomenclature or whatever? So you started at 12 years old, mother's sick, and you guys start going to this church. Was it a slow your involvement, right? Let's say as a family unit. Did it start out as like, yeah, we'll go on Sundays, and then a few months go by, maybe a year goes by, it's like, okay, now we'll go Sundays and Wednesdays? Or did it just go right into, hey, we're going to be as much as we can, we're going to like...
Right away.
First.
I went on my first youth group missions trip literally like a month into being there. The first time I was there, they were like, we're going to Alaska. We're going to pray for people in Alaska. And I was like, Mom, I want to do this. And she was already so enthralled that she found a place here in New Mexico that was believing in these things and was like preaching and talking and practicing this stuff, that she was like, yeah, absolutely, let's get you there. And she put the down deposit like right then and there. And then I ended up like a couple months later that summer going out to Alaska and being up there for about 2 weeks. And we didn't do a whole lot. I mean, we did kind of just like yard work for people. We were like just trying to talk to people, but
like Good Samaritan type shit.
Yeah, it was more just like we wanted to be there for the community that was like, because Kodiak, Alaska is very, very small. It's like I think 10,000 people at most. Most of them are indigenous, and there's a lot of Filipino people there, and we just wanted to be someone that like helped. I don't think we were doing most of that. The church was still kind of getting into this like change of everything. I feel like when we were first going there, they were kind of getting into that. But I mean, the more and more you go, I felt like it was just more like emotional manipulation than anything. And it's like, not that I think that Christians shouldn't be, I mean, I wouldn't even consider myself not to be Christian in the same sense. Like, I want to live like God. I mean, I want to live like Jesus. Who doesn't? Like, who doesn't want to be a good person and like make people feel good and like, show them like love when they don't even feel like they deserve it, right? I mean, I think that's like human nature at its best, right? Is to love. And so, I mean, I think Jesus and I are fucking great. Like we're chilling. Like, like he loves like trans people and he loves like queer people, and it's all through like translation that we've lost a lot of that, which I think is a big problem for any like religion in general, is to like, it's not where the basis of any religion comes from. Is it's a lot of the time it's for love. It's love. It's like, it's, we're seeing all of this terrible things no matter what part of history we're in, and we're going, let's get something better. And this is telling us this is better. So let's like work with that. And I think now in modern church, a lot of the time, not every church, not every person that goes to church, but it's a lot of worshiping the pastor. It's a lot of like what the pastor says and how we go through that. And when we look in the Bible and what like church meant in general, it was just fellowship. It was hanging out with your buds. Like it was literally like getting a cold one with the boys. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what church was. And it was like, let's talk about what we're learning and like how are we going to continue to be better people for people around us.
Well, in some, and then in other places, which quite frankly, I was never this kind of guy growing up, but I find myself leaning more into it slowly but surely now. So I'd imagine that a lot of it was that, and a lot of the way, at least in the West, the way that the gatherings that Jesus would hold during those times were very much like, hey, we're gonna go to this secluded area, me and all my followers, and have this just as an not open discussion, but it's like anyone can show up, anyone can come, no one's better than the other, that type of stuff. And then I think that the modern church has taken that a little bit too far with, again, worshiping the pastor. And then there's the other section of it where it's like, so, and you find this a lot in like Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Catholicism for sure, where it's so formal and it's so tradition based. I find myself kind of aligning more towards that, because then it's like, well, at least these people have a respect for the religion in some capacity.
I think that's
great, what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I think is awesome. So because what you said, there's a lot to unpack. Mm-hmm. So, because you're right, I think that because when you're going somewhere to do this mission stuff, and you spoke a little bit about, and I kind of want you to expand on that. Let's go with the type of manipulation that you experienced. Do you think it was a manipulation of yourself, those around you, people you were serving? Because not that I've witnessed it firsthand, but even if I didn't read stories about it, it is a very, it's not a far-fetched assumption to think that representatives of churches can go out and do good things, not in the name of, I want to be an example of God, therefore I'm just going to go do good things with nothing in return, rather than I'm going to go do good things and then slap my church's name on it so that as a marketing tool, so they know that, hey, you want to be a good person, come to my church, which on paper, it's like, okay, that's a good recruiting method. But then on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, where's your heart really at? So at the age of, let's say like 12 to, let's keep in the years that you're still a minor, right? Mm-hmm. So 12 to 17, generally speaking, because manipulation is a key component of a cult. What manipulation tactics did you see? Were they done like to you directly? Was it people around you? Like what did you witness?
It was a lot of different things. It would depend on like how new you were to the church, because I know that one of the things that we were told to do was to make sure that we gave somebody a hug. If we saw somebody that we'd never seen before, it was time for a hug. It was time for, like to show them that they're welcome and that we want them back and get to know their name and hear something about their life. And so that's already, if that's what you tell all the youth, when a new person comes, they've got 20 people in all of the congregation just talking to this one person. It's like, oh my God, I've got a community already. They already want to know about me and about the things that I'm doing. I think that was the first step to that. I saw it with like, if I was doing good within like the youth group or like church, I would get invited to do drums for worship. That's where I like learned a lot of like my like drumming skills was through the church. So if I was doing good and they felt like I was really close to God, I got to do things, right? So it was always like trying to work to be better so that I could get this thing that really fulfilled me. I think there was like the way that they would talk about finances. I think that's a huge manipulation part of New Life City. they would be like, we're in the red, guys, so make sure you give us extra for tithing so that we can get out of the red. But why are you in the red in the first place? And it's buying cars, it's buying pretty houses, it's making sure that you're adding people to the thing that I think it was like, you get closer, or right after they would do tidings, they would be like, okay, we're going to feel out the crowd, and we're going to talk to God, and we're going to figure out who's sick. So it'd be like, I'm getting, lung cancer. And so the one person that is dealing with lung cancer would stand up, and the whole church would pray for them. So it felt like this big thing. Manipulation in the way that I think that they stopped predators. They didn't stop predators. They let predators be there. They would confront them about what they were doing and what they were doing to children, but they wouldn't they wouldn't tell them to leave. So we were having all of these people that were just running around, and we'd only know so much about it, right?
Right.
And
so okay, let's take a pause there. So finances, let's start with that one. And obviously it's a huge stigma, and it's backed up by pretty fucking solid evidence that people that lead churches, or let's make it a little more broad and just say religious communities, right? Regardless of size, that leaders of those communities will exploit that for money and then use it for their own gain, right?
Absolutely.
As much as you could have known when you were in that church, was it did you know for a fact that's hey, why if we're such a give to God, gives the community type organization, did you know for a fact that the head guy had a huge house or nice cars or something like that? For a fact, yeah.
Absolutely. Went to the head pastor at the time's house, and he lives on the side of the mountain in a multi-million-dollar home. And I remember going in and being okay, but I know people that are struggling to even get day to day. I had friends that I would sleep over at their house, and their house is falling apart. Right, but this guy's got $1 million.
And they're members of your church.
There's members of our church
right.
and these are things that people talk to these people about these things. They'd be I'm struggling, I don't know what to do. I mean, there's just a lot of oversight that I think a pastor sometimes has over their congregation that I don't really appreciate too. But the people that were working for the church got taken care of, which is great, right? I don't want anybody to struggle, but it's just at what point
do we
not do these things?
No,
right?
no. I agree with that. There is a balancing act that's been lost for the most part where, yeah, it's if you're running, and I think something like this specifically applies to churches because of the base they come from, right? Of being closer to God. So if you are a pastor or a whatever title they have, and you run a church, and it's obviously for profit because you're doing quite well for yourself. And you make so much money, and you have an amazing house, all these cars, all this stuff, whatever. Material things, right? That's the real point of this, is material. You have a lot of material stuff, to include money, obviously. And then when members of your congregation are this is happening. And it may or may not be their fault. You know what I mean? It could 100% be their fault. It could also be just life happens and everything in between.
Absolutely.
But if you have people interested that, my house is fucking full. I'm struggling to pay rent. We had a pipe burst and I can't afford to get it fixed, or the fridge went out, the hot water heater went out, shit like that. And your only answer to them is I'll pray for you. I get why that's your first answer, but it shouldn't be the last.
No, not when you have resources like you do, right?
Exactly. And I'm not saying the church needs to be a place of endless handouts. I'm not saying that, because we've seen how well that works for the government, right? Endless handouts, not good. However, the money funneling to the top, it is a governmental system, probably isn't the best thing either, especially when, again, if you want to just use the most bare bone example, Jesus, by all accounts, Christian and otherwise, again, just the people or the groups of people that acknowledge that he was a real person,
absolutely.
Right? Which is broad.
Every religion had something to say about him,
right,
as a person.
One of the only common denominators is that he was anti-government. as the most basic definition of what it means to be anti-government, he was anti-government.
Jesus is a comrade, for real. Socialist Jesus on the way, bro.
Jesus Christ. But, so in that respect, to have your congregation and your leadership structures, put it that way, right? Your hierarchy of the church have more than a few things in common with a governmental structure as it sits today, probably not the best thing. So let's move on to the second issue that you brought up, which again, unfortunately is, and it's not just a problem in a church, it's a problem in any place that has a structure based on power.
Yep.
Predatory individuals.
Absolutely.
Was it one of those things, because not only the impression that I'm getting from you, but just lived experience and just how it tends to work out, there are individuals in the church, whether they're prominent because everyone knows them or they're prominent due to their position, that they are in positions of power. They can be predatory, whether it's exploiting people for resources, whether it's sexual power, whether it's just power in general. It's like, hey, I get to tell you to do something and you do it. That type of shit. Was it one of the situations where people knew it was happening but nobody said anything? Or was it one of the things where, like, when it came out, it was like, whoa, not Jim? What do you mean? Like, where did it fall?
It kind of fell into, like, the head people would know about these things, and there would be certain times where you would see, like, children and adults go into meetings to talk about these things, or, like, you would have, like, frustrations, and you would go talk about these to the pastor about these things. So it was always very, like, they had a control aspect over it. I mean, I remember there was one time someone was, like, funneling money into themselves. They were, like, money laundering, and I'm pretty sure it was just a front for like predatory behavior. Just the way that he would be acting with the children and all these things. And I would, like, talk to people afterwards, and they would be like, yeah, I definitely experienced some of that. And there was...
So your point of view on that, not to cut you off, but your point of view on that would be, at least with this individual towards kids, is sexual gratification.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think there's also, like, also, like, power dynamics too, right? With just, like, oh, you're going to do this. Like, you're going to be a part of this. Or, like, they would tell my mom and my dad that they were going to be pastors. They were going to leave the church at some point and then start their own church along with New Life City. There's no way my dad would have been a pastor. There's no way that man would have gotten on stage and done that. But, so they would, like, hold that over. It's like, okay, so you're going to do this, so now we need you to do this, this, and this, and this. And I remember when my mom passed, the youth pastor ended up coming to my mom's funeral, and he remember being just like, I never like, gave your mom the opportunities that she wanted. And she would come to me all these times, right? So it was just, like, this control of, like, who they thought were good.
Opportunities meaning?
Like, I would say, like, she would have ideas about how to, like, make things better, or, like, like, productivity things, or maybe we should go to, this part of town and start talking to people, and they would just not listen to her, but they would tell her that she was going to be this big thing, this big feature. So it was just, like, holding you in that middle ground to get you to do the things that you wanted.
Okay, I see.
So that's the kind of the power dynamic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, I get what you're saying. It's like stringing somebody along. No, I get what you're saying. Okay. So how many years total did you spend in this church?
I think I left when I was 19.
19.
Yeah. So I had joined not a Christian metalcore band, but I joined a metalcore band. And I remember we took pictures. This is really what stopped me. And I feel like, honestly, if they didn't get so weird about this, I probably would have stayed a little longer. But I was in this non-Christian, like, metalcore band, and we had someone that had a shirt or one of our band photos that said, "Fuck your faith." And that started a big church thing. I remember people being like, not even knowing this kid, being like, his parents are drug addicts, like, he's awful. And I would just remember being like, you guys are judging this person without knowing a single thing about them.
Yeah.
And it was hurtful because it was my friend, obviously, right? And I was like, this person isn't a bad person. They just like a band that has this shirt, and they don't fuck with the way that, like, Christianity is, like, messed with them in their life. That's totally fair. But yeah, they were just spreading all these rumors about this person that they didn't know. And I was like, I can't do it anymore. Like, I'm done. Like, I've got work on Sundays and Saturdays. I'm not coming to church. Like, I can't keep on doing this. I can't keep on playing 90 BPM drum music.
Yeah.
And then getting off stage and then like the older people being like, that was too rock and roll for me. Jesus isn't rock and roll. And I'd be like, I hit the snare one extra time. I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah, I mean, I also just was like, why would I can't give up blind faith to something. I can't. As a physical person, it never made sense to me to love something more than someone else that was actually physically there for me, right? Like, and I get like wanting to live good for the benefit of people and like other things and that, like, I feel like is a really great draw for Christianity, but it just never made sense. I was never going to love.
Okay, let's pause there because I think that what I've been looking for in your account of all this is what is differentiating this from a religious sect to a cult, right? And I think that is the biggest point that you made that differentiates.
Yeah.
In what way during the years you were there, in what way were they trying to, again, it's manipulation, but trying to love, because I'm getting the impression, I'm getting the impression that they wanted you to love the organization and the leaders in the organization more than other people in your life or things in your life, but the way they masked it is showing the love to the organization and the people that run it is the same thing as loving God.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes culty, for sure. So not when, but like over the years you were there, what moments or experiences come to mind of like, oh, they are definitely trying to make me prioritize them and this organization more than like friends, family, hobbies, which would eventually become a job you're doing, taking pictures and being with these bands, being your own type of band. What moments like that come to mind with them trying to take you away from that kind of stuff?
I remember I told them, I was like, hey, I don't know if I could do Sunday service anymore. I have work at the same time, and I'm showing up late to work because I'm doing this. And I remember they were like, cool, we're taking you off completely. Like, it was like a punishment that I couldn't be there anymore. So I think that was like one of the first steps of manipulation. I think it was, I mean, they just had so many different people talk to us at certain points. It was like we would get different ideas from different people. And so it was just always consistently changing. But I mean, I would be there 3 or 4 times a week. So it was, whether or not that they wanted me to give more, I was already giving that. And so they already had me and where they were. And I think like even besides the manipulation part, I mean, I think we can't heal the dead, like we can't heal cancer.
Yeah.
I don't think that's like, I can't walk through a wall just because Jesus did. You know what I'm saying? Like
So what instances were they were telling you could heal the dead? When was
all the time. I mean, in Brazil, I remember one time I was praying for this gentleman and he had some form of like muscular dystrophy and he couldn't grow muscles as like he would. So he wasn't able to walk. And I remember sitting there, we were praying for him. And then all of a sudden we see his like arm move and the muscle move in his arm and his mom starts crying. And then like the interpreter is like, this is wild. They've never seen anything like this before. And it was like absolutely just like insane to see these things, right? So it was like always consistently every time that there would be after worship, it would be when we get the tithe, right? And then after tithe, we would start doing like prophecy. So we'd be like, is there anybody in the building that's maybe dealing with like marital problems?
Okay, so let's focus on the Brazil thing. Let's focus on that. So when you're praying over somebody and in that specific instance, what happened? Who was there? Like from the church, right? Specifically, who was there? And then after there was some visible improvement in his arm, what happened? Like, just what
we just continued to pray, and his whole family. I mean, it was pretty much I think his mom, his dad, and his little sister or his older sister were there, and it was him in the wheelchair. And then I had a interpreter, and that was where pretty much it was only the people that I was with from New Mexico were in a different group, and so we were in this Coliseum basically, this big theater, and we're all kind of different places, and people are coming up to get prayer from us.
Oh shit! So you were like in a presentation setting.
Yeah.
I had the image of you going to somebody's house. So the church went to a presentation setting in Brazil where people were able to come, and I'd imagine the advertisement was come and get healed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Basically,
Absolutely.
as it, just dissolving it down was come and get healed. This guy comes up, muscular dystrophy or atrophy, and you guys pray over him, and assuming he had never had sensation like that in his arm, begins to have sensation. What follows that?
I mean, excitement, right? I mean, like personally for me, I remember feeling like I'm powerful. I was like, oh, I'm amazing. I can fucking heal people, like, through God. Like, fuck yeah. Like, let me pray for you. Like, you know, like it was, for me, it was like empowerment. It was continuing to see like what they were talking about being real. It was great to see these people like feel something, you know, like you could see the emotions on their face. This wasn't just something that they, you know, are like, oh, it's happening. And it was like, oh my God, this is new. Like, it was so visceral to them in that way that I think they probably converted that night. They probably went and talked to somebody that's, you know, spoke Portuguese, and were like, I mean, if you do that, you see these things, why wouldn't you,
Can't
right?
fucking blame them. Gotta be honest.
Oh yeah, I mean, once you like realize, I remember there was one person in church, and they were like, "Oh, I got healed of cancer," and they showed the papers to everybody. There was like cancer, and then there was no cancer after prayer. And
it's just two blank papers. At first, I had cancer. Now it's no cancer.
Well, we're a bunch of Christians, and we're like, yeah, Photoshop isn't real. Like, that doesn't happen in real life. No one can, forge a document.
Because I hear a story like that, and removing myself from my own religious predisposition rather, it's okay. Maybe there was a power of God there. Maybe he allowed that to happen. That is well, and to my own belief, that is within the realm of possibility. But removing myself from that, it's like, okay, maybe it was a happenstance. Maybe there was medicine or a procedure that he had been undergoing beforehand, and just so happened that was the thing. It's also a possibility that whatever is in us biologically and chemically and whatever the fuck is going on in our body that allows you to heal and heal beyond measurable, like, or beyond a reasonable outcome. Example, the inverse of that meaning like you can literally think your way into being sick. Like, I don't know if you've heard of that or not.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's a thing where it's like if you focus on being sick long enough, this sounds fucking ridiculous, but like if you focus on being sick over a long enough period of time, you start getting the fucking sniffles. Like your immune system's like, are we sick? What's going on? Let's start fighting things off. What are we fighting off, right? And then as a byproduct of that, you end up getting like cold symptoms. You start getting like allergic symptoms. Shit, like you're literally allergic to your own body, allergic to your own thoughts. Like it's it's kind of along the same lines as I forget who the fuck said it. It was a philosopher, I think, that said it was like you can't or you shouldn't be making jokes about yourself because your body doesn't know the difference. Your brain does not know the difference between jokes and criticism. They make it on yourselves. It's like, oh yeah, like I'm so stupid. Well, your body's like, oh, I guess we're stupid now. Let's store that for later.
Absolutely.
Right, and it harms you that way.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it was, again, to kind of flip that, maybe there were so many people praying and giving off this just, I'm not an energy or like a vibes
That's
guy,
kind of how I feel about it
but
now,
like,
yeah.
whatever that human connection thing is that you like have the ability to tap into when you're on like mushrooms or something like that, right? That whatever that human connection is, maybe all that channeled in and it gave him a little twitch. Who the fuck knows?
Well, absolutely, right? Yeah.
But the issue that I take with a lot of that is, and I understand why other people in the church would take issue with it, is that if that ends up happening, I mean, if I'm the leader of that church and I hear about that happen, it's like, oh shit, God just threw us a bone. Oh shit, let's just keep saying what we're saying, and then it gives them more confidence to be like, yeah, we can heal the dead. What's up, dude? Because I don't. It's not far fetched to hear that these type of people were telling you and others in the congregation, especially as kids, that you could heal the dead, right? And so that mixed with, hey, put things in your life second or third to what we're doing here, that's when it starts giving me the like, okay, this is a little bit more than a religious practice here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's For a long time, I mean, if that's where you get your social outings, that's where you get your friends, that's where you have your friends, that's where you get the most like congratulations or like, acceptance for like who you are, what you are, then you're going to go back, like you're going to want to be there. And I absolutely agree with like the energy thing. That's how I look at it now. I'm like, it must have just been some kind of like developing energy that we were all having in hopes that something would change. And also like, when your child is like diagnosed with a disability, a lot of parents will look at that as like the end of the world, like, oh, my child's broken, right? And so if that's the mindset that you have with your child the whole time, and then they finally prove you wrong, even in the smallest way, it's going to be an emotional reaction because that's what you thought it was going to be, like, oh no, my child's disabled, they're never going to be able to do these things. And so if you're never told that you can do those things, why would you even try?
Interesting.
That's kind of how I look at it. I feel like there was a lot of like sociology kind of in there, and it's just also social. It's all like how obviously that was a big emotional reaction to them. That creates in their brain this like synapses of like, this is good. It releases dopamine. It has all these healing effects just in general to release that emotion. So they're gonna go back.
Yeah,
everyone is, right? Like if you feel like you're accepted, and I have friends, and I have like these things, and I'm being told I'm doing great, I'm not gonna stop. Why would you stop if you've been telling that you're doing the best job you possibly can be, and that you can do more, and we're gonna do more, and you are capable of more, right? Consistently, you're not gonna stop, whether that be music, fighting, like boxing or whatever. Like you're gonna continue to go as long as somebody has like your back on that.
And then when they add the extracurriculars on top of that and say, hey, you can do this, you can be better than God, you can do all that, that's when it starts to become, fuck. Yeah, I don't blame you. Looking back on that, so you got out when you're 19. How old are you now?
28.
28. Okay. So looking back on that, almost 10 years later, have you gone to a church since? What's your relationship with church? Not even just religion, but just because we already covered that. Your relationship with institution, with church, what does that look like now?
For me, I mean, I think, after getting out of like that religion and kind of like the whole like institutional thing, I obviously came out. And that kind of like changed a whole lot. And then I was starting to realize like not only the way that some of those people were treating me after that happened, but also just like what the church and their part in discrimination towards queer people was. And so that was like, okay, I'm not going to support any organization that says this is what I need to, this is how I need to be, or queer people are of the devil, or they should go to hell, or some people believe that we should just be killed right away. And that's wild to me. And I was like, well, I can't be someone who like wants this to be like welcomed in every aspect and loved and cherished by all people, just like, being straight is, right, that I can't go back to that place after all the hurt that they've caused my entire community. It felt like I was almost, like turning my back on that if I would. It was like I was, again, like not being there. And I guess there's like some of those things that come from like being in a religious like thing that still are there, but I've thought about it. I've had a couple people be like, hey, you want to go to Bible study? And now that I'm like been doing school and like debating people, I'm like, oh yeah, let's do it. Like I have so many thoughts now. Like I have like cohesive thoughts on why I don't think this is okay, or maybe ways we can change it so that people can enjoy that aspect of their life. Because if it's doing good for you and it's making you a better person, then I'm not going to tell you to stop. Why would I do that? Like, why would I be like that kind of person in general? It's the same thing with like someone being like, you can't be queer. And it's like, well, that person's happy as fuck and they finally feel good about themselves. Like, at what point do we tell them to stop? So it's just.
No, I understand. No, I understand the thought process. I do. And that is something that if I ever want to get into a quick religious debate with myself, it is the homosexuality conversation. Because on the one hand, I truly could not care less what people do.
Absolutely.
I truly could not care less. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I just don't care because I recognize not my fucking business. Because again, like my general barometer for things socially is what if it was flipped on me, right? And quite frankly, if there's some fucking, if there's just some degeneracy going on and I was participating in it, I want someone to slap the shit out of me. Like, hey, stop being stupid. Get back on track, right?
Absolutely.
But then at the same time, I do not want to get berated for being into women in the same way that I don't want any gay men or gay women getting berated for loving someone that's the same sex as them.
Yeah.
At the same time, like I have that. And at the same time, I recognize what my own religion says, where it's, gay people and people that are not, that people that practice homosexuality. I'm trying to get this as like close to definition.
No, absolutely.
Possible.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. If people that practice homosexuality go to hell, like that is in the Christian religion, right? And that's where I kind of go back and forth, and where I try to wrap it around for myself is like, okay, supposed to be like God, more specifically supposed to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. Jesus quite literally went out of his way to be with what was considered the degenerates of society at the time. So it's the prostitutes, it's the murderers, it's, funny enough, the tax collectors, which I always thought that is one of my favorite parts of the Bible, is when they're in the New Testament, is when they're like in the first four in the Gospels, right?
Yeah,
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, when they're like naming off all the bad people that Jesus hung out with, they always throw in the tax collectors. Because as they're etching that shit into stone, they're like, fuck you. I paid extra money for this piece of stone. That's how
why
I
couldn't
see
we
it.
just like stuck with that, right? And just like continue to hate taxes instead of queer people? I mean, it makes more sense to me. Like, fuck the tax collectors.
But then at the same time, I agree. By the way, I don't like we threw tea into the water for a lot less shit than what we're going through right now.
Oh just my God.
But and then at the same time, because of how much people hated tax collectors back then, Jesus went out of his way to say, hey, give Caesar his due. He went out of his way to say that, right? But anyway, my point is that he went out of his way to spend time with those that were considered the degenerates of their society. And he never said don't love them. He never said don't break bread with them. He never said any of that. He never said be prejudiced against them, right? To be discriminatory against them.
No.
Never said that. But at the same time, preach the principles of what the prerequisite of that religion is. And I also take a lot of comfort in knowing that there isn't, with the exception of flat out just denouncing and rejecting God and Jesus and just truly feeling it in your heart that you're like, F this is stupid, all that kind of stuff. There is not a unforgivable sin in Christianity. And the best way it was described to me, because then the obvious rebuttal to that is, well, I mean, hey, you can sin all you want, and then at the end of the day, as long as you ask for forgiveness, you're all good. You've been given a blank check. You're all good. When that's not the case, the best way it was explained to me by a few people is that God, and as obviously Jesus and the Holy Spirit wrapped in that, but God knows your heart, and for both better or worse, if I remember this properly. So for better or worse. So if he knows that it's like, hey, this dude has completely rejected me, all right, that's what love is. Love is giving free will to choose me or choose not, or not choose me, whatever that is the way it is. And so I know that homosexuality, by the letter of Christianity, is a sin, but it's forgivable, because I hate because I have gay friends that I fucking love.
Absolutely.
And I'd hate the idea of them going to hell because of because especially like as I've grown up, like, because I was definitely raised on the idea that homosexuality is a choice. And I was like, okay, I mean, I guess, like, all right, whatever. But then as I grew up, I'm like, wait, that makes no fucking sense. That makes no fucking sense, because I didn't choose to be into chicks.
No.
I just hit 13, 14 years old, and I was like, bro, tits are awesome. Tits are awesome. Like, whoa, why do I love this so much? But then at the same, and that is the same exact story, but towards men, that 100% of my gay friends that I've had that conversation with have told me, Where it's like, yeah, I kind of just like thought dudes were hot. I don't know what the fuck happened.
Yeah, for real.
I don't know what the fuck happened. And so it's, and I understand why a lot of that type of rhetoric, because I don't think a lot of people know how to, now, I'm not saying that I do, but I think a lot of people don't know how to articulate themselves around that issue. And even if they know how to, they don't because they're scared.
Absolutely.
Because of something that you just explained. I mean, you were in a picture where someone had a shirt the church didn't like and they told you to go fuck yourself. Lord forbid you say in a modern American church that is like, because there's the modern American church that has basically foregone all morals that Christianity actually has. And then there's another modern American church where they are so strict and they are so discriminatory and they are so like, no, you can't be saved if you're X, Y, or Z. Try saying that in that church. They will kick you to the wind immediately. So I mean, not that I advocate for separating from churches, but like I understand why people are like, fuck this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live my life the way I want to.
Well, just why would we hate somebody that's not actively hurting somebody? You know, like, and if whether it be themselves, it's still like why would you actively hate somebody that's not doing anything against you? And it's also like, what about the translations and the many translations that we've gone through of the Bible, and who's been in charge of those translations? And like, I think there's a lot of people that theorize that specific Bible verse where it's like, men shall not lay with men or another person like that, it was talking about pedophilia. They didn't want, like, it was like against, don't fuck a kid. Like,
The Catholic Church missed that memo.
Oh my God. Pastime, you know?
I love talking shit so much.
No, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's and I would love to be the guy that has the answer, because that's the question that I have a lot too about the translation issue, right? It's like, well, it's been passed down so many times. I mean, we see how, I mean, you sit down with 5 other idiots to play a game of telephone, you know?
Absolutely.
And then you see how easily that gets fucked up. And that just goes down through years and generations, thousands of years. And I feel like the Band-Aid answer to that is, well, the people that have been translating the Bible are doing that through God's word, through God's influence. Like, okay, yes, but then also, like, who told you he was under God's influence? In all fairness. And again, this is obviously when you ask a question like that, I have to separate myself from my religious bias, but it's like, okay, well, like, how do you know he was actually under God's influence? Because fucking David Koresh said he was under God's influence too. And look how good Waco turned out. Sorry, but I mean, there are people throughout history that use God as a scapegoat.
Absolutely.
And they get what's coming to them, unfortunately, and typically they take other people down with them that may or may not have deserved it. But, I mean, and that's just the overarching issue that I have with that answer, and that's why I kind of categorize that as more of a Band-Aid solution to it all. And I would love to, I still haven't heard one, but I would love to hear like a legitimate, like, this is why, like, you know, this is why these translations are good, these are why these ones are bad. And because I'm not, like, over the last couple of years, I've become like more into reading. But I mean, if you haven't fucking noticed, I read more comics than anything else. But you know, I make it a point to only read like old school translations of the Bible, not just so I can get closer to like what it means, but so I can expand the vernacular and really understand like what that time was like. Like if I had all the time in the world, I would love to fucking learn Hebrew. Or like Aramaic and like really like those. Like
to be able to like really read it, I think would be
like
it's important.
Yeah. Shit. But anyway, and I think for the sake of conversation, and I think this has kind of gotten lost in its own kind of translation, really over the last 10 years, I'd say, like since the second of the beginning of the second Obama administration. What is the in your opinion, in your own point of view, what is the definition of queer? What is queer?
Not straight.
Okay.
That's kind of how I look at it. I mean,
how is that different than gay?
I mean, I think it's just an extra word. I think it really just kind of depends on certain people appreciating that. I think also queer was used as a slur for a while to like just talk about. I mean, it really in general means weird.
Like when I grew up, there was a game called, I think we were in the last generation to have it. It was called Smear the Queer.
Oh yeah.
It was the idiot that got left with the ball, and they're gonna get a concussion for the day.
Oh yeah. Great childhood games, right?
Yeah. So you're right. Generally, it just means weird or out of the ordinary.
Out of the ordinary, right? It's not normal. And I think it goes into even more like colonialism and just trying to separate yourself from like what is okay or what is good, right? It's like, we're not the normal. We're not the man and the woman. We're not someone that like thinks that, relationship should be a certain way or all these things. It's out of the ordinary. It's an other in that way. And I think that like even like looking through like women's studies in my last semester that I did, it's so much of a way of othering somebody, and that I think through society as a way to become stronger as a community, use these ways that they've other people for personal gain, like not a personal gain, but like uplifting, right? It's like the same thing as like taking back a slur and using it for yourself and using it with your friends that are also maybe have been considered that as a while. But there are some people that hate the word queer. There's a lot of like there's a lot of just LGBTQ plus IA, whatever you want to call it, people that don't like that word, that just think it's not good, and so it's just different with everybody. For me, it's just an easy way to describe, like, I feel like a lot of this, like, gay, lesbian, trans, butch, top, soft top, bottom, all these things, it's just a way to describe yourself to somebody. Soft top.
That's a thing?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I had on my Mustang a few years ago. It's fucking soft top. I had a convertible. Like, that's what, up until 15 seconds ago, that is what soft top meant in my life, was I had a convertible, and it was a Mustang that was easily broken into. It's what a fucking soft top was.
That's kind of what it is, though, too. And easily breakable,
Okay. That's funny. So, no, go ahead.
Soft top really just is like, it's more used in like the women loving women, like, sapphic kind of realm for someone that just like also is very touchy and likes to like kind of feel things. And there's women who are like, like stone butches, which you don't touch them. That's not how they feel like gratification sexually. They like doing things to other people. So there's just like all these things, and everyone's so different. But like queer to gay, if you really want to go into like the definitions of that, gay is usually used for a cis man who loves another cis man or loves a man, right? And then there's like, lesbian, that's obviously women loving women. There's sapphic, and then queer is just kind of an overwhelming like compass. Like, for me, like, it's a lot more complicated than what I feel like I let on a lot of the time. Like, I'll usually tell, like, in my, like, comedy stuff, I go, I'm a trans lesbian, right? And that, to me, just means that I like trans people and women, and I'm not, like, super about cis men. And that's just me personally. That's not, like, and that's not to say that I'm not attracted to cis men, but it's so much easier just to tell somebody 3 words when they're asking you about it than it is to explain all of that in that moment, right? So it's more of about like just trying to communicate with people for me, because I could go into details like, well, I like men and I also like women, but there's certain things that I don't like about both, and there's like certain ways that I feel connected to each. A random person on the street's not gonna have that conversation.
And I just asked because there are so many terms now, right? There are so many not qualifiers, but there are so many different like names, titles, not even descriptions, but just let's say, and I don't mean this in derogatory, but like labels, right? There's many different labels in general. So with what you just described, how close or far away is that from the term pansexual, which to my understanding means there is not necessarily a biologically speaking, an individual you're attracted to. You're attracted to pretty much anybody. It's more around the personality, which I thought was always the funny one, because it's like, well, the number one way that animals, I didn't say humans, that humans are attracted, or that choose their mate, the number one way they do that is based on attraction. And if it weren't for, like modern contraception and all that kind of stuff, that the number one way that people, procreate would just be through these drunken one-night stands that happen all the fucking time. So with that as a descriptor, and then with what you just described, how close are they to one another? I guess we're comparing queer to pansexual. Where do they, or is it all like, not to be a fucking, not to use like a lot of more modern, like, is it all just like fluid? Does it all like flow together? Does it kind of just like over like a really weird Venn diagram? You know what I mean?
This is my personal opinion and kind of like really where I'm coming from. I feel like queer is kind of just like an umbrella term for all of that.
And your personal opinion is all I give a fuck about right now.
Cool, yeah. So it's just like in my personal opinion, it's kind of just like an umbrella term, and there's obviously like certain things that you probably will align with being in that realm that make you feel good. But there's also like some people that I know that like would be considered pansexual or bisexual, and to me, I think they're the same. I mean, I think that like a lot of people feel like bi and the definition of the word, a lot of people look at the word and what the word means, right? So it's like the same thing with like trans and cis, right? It's not like we're trying to change or like separate people. It's in definition of the word, transgender is someone who does not align with the birth that they were assigned when they were born, right?
Yeah,
and then
right,
cisgender is someone that does. So that's the definition of that. But there's so many people that can fit inside of that like it just depends. Like, I mean, if I'm talking like with another queer person, or I'm having a conversation with another queer person, we don't really talk about that. We just kind of talk about what we do, or how we are, or who we're like attracted to, right? But it's like I think a lot of it is just, for me, I think we live by these labels so that we don't have to anymore. Because at some point we're not going to. I don't think we're gonna have to be like, that person's trans. It's just gonna be like, no, that person feels the way that they do, they dress the way that they do the things that they do because it makes them feel good.
That's interesting.
Instead of like, oh, that person's trans or that person's cis, because it's like, you as a cis man can go out in a skirt and if you feel great in a skirt, it doesn't make you trans, it doesn't make you a woman, it doesn't make you gay either, right? It's just something that you enjoy. And so I think for me, the biggest like push is just to get away from those labels, but we're going to do that through using them. Because it's education. It's education for people that don't necessarily understand. And for some reason, for people, I feel like a lot of the time, if people don't understand you or where I'm coming from, there's a lot more hate involved. But when they get to know me, it's not even that, right? It's like they break down like this barrier that they have between like trans people and a normal person. And I'm not now that normal person when I get to break that barrier with them.
Right. And we'll get back to specifically the hate portion of that. That's obviously, unfortunately, that is a huge element of this conversation, right? It's a huge element of that culture. I think not only just on this podcast, but just in general to everything that I listen to, I think you're the first person that's ever proposed the idea that we're going to get away from these labels. Why do you think that is? And is it preferable?
For me, I feel like it's preferable. It's less like dividing and more of like a whole, like, because we are all humans, right? And there are like scientific discoveries that we've realized that like certain trans people have, like, their brains are developing as the gender that they assign with, and we have peer-reviewed studies that show these things, right? So we're just humans. Like, let's stop looking at like, oh, that person's gay, or that person's Mexican, or that person's white, or whatever, and it's just a human. That to me feels like the ultimate goal in life, is in society and how we evolve. Because right, there's evolution, whether you want to believe that we all evolved from something. I think even Christians can realize that we evolve socially. Things change. We're learning new words. We're learning new ways of dealing with things. Obviously, like, outside circumstances happen. And I think I see that as the only way of homogenizing humans, is just being together and as one, as a human, right? And that's how we get over all this like racist bullshit, and that's how we get over all this homophobia and transphobia, is that I look at you as a human being, you look at me as a human being. I'm not hurting anybody, I'm not killing anybody, I'm not forcing myself on anybody. I'm just being a human.
Right.
That loves other humans, right? And so that's like, I think that's the end of it, is like, and that to me is the most Christian way of looking at it too, is that we were all put on this planet to love at some point, if we want to look at that, and like we're told to be like Jesus, which is just the most loving, chill ass dude, comrade ever. Dude, like, I would chill with Jesus. Jesus would get drunk. Also, Jesus, like, I feel like he was gay. He's so gay.
Okay,
Jesus is so gay.
Okay, Jesus was not gay, But, yeah, he turned water into wine. Sorry. Like, that, last that I checked, wine.
That's the gayest thing about him.
Oh, my God. Okay, no. But.
You've never seen a gay guy be like, we need some wine.
Well, back then, that was a sign of, that was a sign of your social status.
Absolutely.
If you're able to bring wine. I get you're going for a joke. But
very much so a joke.
For the individuals that are, anyway.
Please no one get mad at me for calling Jesus gay. I don't know his sexuality.
No, if I'm not getting upset while setting some correction in the conversation,
you're totally fine. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you fuckers shouldn't get upset either. And if you're also coming to this podcast for any sort of religious clarity, I'm really sorry. I will buy you a Bible myself.
That's fine. Sorry. Yeah, no, you can come to me for that stuff. I know all of it actually. I've been studying it. I'm really great at the Bible, obviously, with my words that I've said today.
Right.
I know.
So, and it's funny because I wanted you to explain that. I thought that's where you were going with it, because I agree. I think that is best case scenario.
Absolutely.
We're never going to get rid of racism, and that's not me like giving it a blanket like be as racist as you want. You're never going to get rid of it anyway.
Please don't.
Yeah. We don't do that. Preferably don't. But we're never going to get, because of who we are as humans. Biologically in us, we are tribal individuals, and that's just how things are going to be, unfortunately. And that is why, up until I would say like 2008, 2010, the term racist, Nazi, fascist, those words still had some kind of meaning. And now they get used so much that they're starting to lose their meaning. Absolutely. And I think that's the snowball effect that we're seeing into like did you see the legislative there's a legislative hearing that happened last week, and it was the head or the president of it was three different, I think they're all, not that it matters to the comment, but I think they're all women. It was the three different presidents for both Penn, MIT, and Harvard, where they all went in front of a legislative hearing. Did you see that?
No.
Okay, this is fucking bananas. So they all go in front of a in front of legislative congressional hearing. It was a bunch of senators asking them questions because of the October 7th attack that happened in Israel, and now there's a bunch of pro-Palestine or pro-Palestinian like protests and marches and demonstrations that are happening all over the world, but specifically on a lot of these college campuses. And then intermingled with that, there are pro-Hamas, marches, protests, all that type of shit. And there are people, and they showed it during the legislative hearing, there are people in these marches, college kids, that are calling for the genocide of Jewish people. So they bring the presidents up where this is most predominant at, and unfortunately it's at some of the biggest colleges, not only in this country, but in the fucking planet.
Absolutely.
3 of the biggest institutions on the planet. And they sit them down, and the 2 that went viral, well, the one that went the most viral was the Penn State, because she actually just resigned because of it.
Oh, wow.
And then Harvard was close behind. This legislative hearing, nobody watches legislative hearings. Nobody. I do because I'm a dork, but nobody else does. This legislative hearing got over 1 billion views.
Wow.
Basically what happened, I'll say this in levels of severity. So they get the Harvard president. President, I think, President, is that? Yeah, her name is, I forget her first name, but it's President Gay. Get her up, and then she goes, or the congresswoman asks her, is calling for the genocide of Jews against your code of conduct policy? And her answer was only when it becomes, or only when it's directed at an individual. And the congresswoman was like, wait. If they are calling for the genocide of Jewish people, that is not against your code of conduct unless it's against an individual. What they're calling for genocide of a group of individual people. Is that not against your code of conduct? And then the president stuck to her guns. So it's like, okay, fucking all right, move on. Went to the Penn State one, and went to Penn. And it's like, okay, same question. Is the calling for the genocide of Jewish people against your code of conduct and your policies? And she goes, only when it becomes action can we consider it harassment. And the legislator's like, wait. So you're telling me by the definition of your policies that calling for the genocide of anybody is not against your policy unless there's action? So then that means there has to be actual genocide on your campus for it to be against your code of conduct.
Yeah.
And she just stuck there. She just repeated her rhetoric of it has to be acted upon. And she gave her multiple chances. And I'm watching that and I'm just like, okay, there is no way. Like, I feel like any normal person, any person who gets asked, hey, is calling for the genocide of a group of people a bad thing? The general answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like yes. Yeah, bad, very bad. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, I can't help but think, to tie this into what we were originally talking about, I can't help but think that this is the snowball effect, a product of like there's liberals in my eyes, there's like liberals, like there's Democrats, and then there's like the hyper left. And I think that is the vocal minority and a product of their voice being echoed too much to the point where it's like, yo, like what's happening, like to really bring it like to today, what's happening in Gaza, innocent people being killed is horrible. But you cannot conflate that by saying that there should be a genocide of the other side. And that's where we're at. And so to bring that back to your original point of you put it perfectly, homogenizing humans, you're completely right. I don't think we're ever going to get race out of the equation, but as far as what you do in your private life, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or in the middle, it really shouldn't fucking bother you unless it starts affecting minors. Personally, that's where I draw the line. And that is effective across the whole spectrum. If I ever have a kid, right? If I ever have a kid and they're growing up and they are in the dating age, right? So they're 14, 15 and above, right? Starting to have like little girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever. I don't care if my kid is gay, if my kid is straight, fucking who cares, right? Well, I'm still going to love that kid because they're my kid.
Absolutely.
But the moment that little fucking Jenny comes home, not that I name my kid Jenny or anything, but little fucking Jane Doe comes home and she's like, I got a boyfriend. I'm like, oh, what's the little twerp's name? Oh, his name is John and he works down at the docks. He's 26 years old. It's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Slow down.
Wait a minute. You know what I mean? That's when it becomes the issue.
Absolutely, yeah.
And my issue... And it's very ironic because the Democratic side of things, the leftist side of things, they wave the social justice flag. They wave the we're here for everyone thing. Maybe this is a little bit of pessimism, but I look at the way that they treat minorities, and to call it anything more than exploitation, I think you're kind of lying to yourself. You know, and the reason I say that is they use it, and you can look at from the political standpoint, you can look at it from a business standpoint, right? Like they look what's in the cultural conversation and they're like, okay, what group of minorities right now are getting the most spotlight? Let's show how much we love them because we want to boost our stocks. We want to make our investors happy. We want to make our shareholders happy. We want to boost our ESG scores. That and the what's the fucking inclusion one? I always forget. It's these. There's 2 3-letter agencies, and one of them is for inclusion, and one of them is for diversity. And I always forget they're fucking. And I'm gonna remember it. I'm taking a couple of hits tonight, and I'm falling asleep. I'm gonna be like, "This is what it was." I'm gonna crash out.
I love being a stoner, and it's like, "What was that? What was that? What was that?" And then it's like 5 days later, you're like,
"Hey, wait a minute,
Palestine."
But yeah, so it's I see it truly is exploitation, and because they're using these people and what they're actually having to deal with, as a way to virtue signal.
Oh, it's the same thing on both sides, though. I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's just something that politicians do. I mean, I think we all like care about like children. No one doesn't care. Your a psychopath, I feel like, if you don't care about children in some form or another. And that's fine if you don't want to have children or whatever. But you have to understand that, like, those are the people that are going to be here when you're not.
Yeah.
So it's just like, you know, like, why aren't we taking care of them? And I get that, but I think that, like, it's also a scapegoat too for a lot of things. I think without, like, the research, I mean, and I don't know if we can definitely not talk about this if you don't want to, but, like, even, like, with the big debate that happened in 2023, like, beginning of the year and then in the summer, right, it was just like, how are we treating trans children, right? That's a big thing.
No, I would love to have that conversation. Go ahead.
we can definitely talk about it. I mean, I think there's a lot of misinformation that's happening on that level, and I think that they take advantage of people specifically that align with the rights, fear that we're hurting children, and go way too far, because it's not that. I mean, if we really want to look at, like, gender affirming care in children, what is it, right? What the right and what some even middle and left. And I also think that, like, the left doesn't give a shit about it, like, trans people. Does not give a shit about queer people. They literally only care about the money that they're making.
The moment they put you on a billboard or an ad, that should be, like, the signifying moment that they don't care. And they're like I was saying earlier, they're using that minority group for a profit.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, and that's the ironic thing. I'm drinking Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch, and their whole Dylan Mulvaney campaign. I think companies are looking at that and seeing how much it blew up in their face, because it wasn't the fact, and people miss this. And I was talking about this on the podcast last night. People focus so much, and it's intentional, I think, because it's what gets the headlines. People focus so much on the Dylan Mulvaney thing. And if you don't like that, fine, whatever. That's between you and God. But the issue and the real reason that they lost all that money, that their stocks plummeted, that people, like, boycotted Budweiser for a while, or Bud Light specifically for a while, wasn't because of Dylan Mulvaney. That was the shock factor. That was the like, in your face, screaming at you, like, focus on me thing. But in my opinion, the real reason that people boycotted Bud Light is because they released that ad. There was the backlash of, like, hey, like, again, the majority of it was on the right. They're like, hey, why are you shoving this culture in my face? Like, this is about beer. This isn't about sexuality. This isn't about gender. This is about the cheapest beer we can find that isn't fucking PBR. Like, this is what this is about, right? And so that was the opening conversation from the right. And then the response from the CEO was, we are trying to move away from the, quote, frat house stigma of Bud Light and branch out into new demographics for our product. And on the one hand, okay, I can understand where that is the starting conversation in a boardroom, where it's like, hey, we make so much money off the frat boys and their girlfriends and their sororities, but how can we make that money in other subcultures of America? That is perfectly fine. But then to go out in public and alienate the number one demographic that buys your product,
it's a bad move, business-wise.
That's business suicide.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Why the fuck would you do that? That's like owning the biggest. That's like owning Cookies, right? Which I'm fairly certain is the biggest dispensary chain in America, right?
Huge.
That's like going out to them, like, you know what? I'm kind of sick of these fucking stoners spending their last $15 on weed. I really want to get the far right conservatives in the South and in the Bible Belt. Let's focus on them. It's like, okay, leave the first part out, bitch.
Why can't you work on that demographic without alienating everybody? And it's also like, why would you think I, like, as a beautiful trans woman, want to drink your Bud Light? Like, I'm just saying, I live in New Mexico, and New Mexico has the best beer in the entire world, and you can fight me for that. I swear to God, we have the best beer. We have the best breweries. We have the best tasting beer. Also, like, percentages, there's no place in the United States other than, like, here, maybe some California places, that you can get an 8.5% beer.
I will say this.
In a six-pack.
Some of the best beer that I've ever had in my life was fucking overseas in Germany. We had some, like, warm style beer.
Mm-hmm. I bet it was good. I mean, I've heard
was-
German beer is pretty
Yeah,
great.
it's like from the proverbial horse's mouth. It was fucking awesome. Only had it once. Had it in a very small mug, but it was fucking good.
I bet.
Oh, it was fucking good. Anyway, so okay, so with the issue with the transgender culture now making its way to children, I'll be honest, I do take issue with that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair. And
yeah.
I want to hear why your
Yeah,
issues are that way.
So my point of view on that is, okay, so I have a couple. Let's start with the money. I think that's not the easiest way, but I think it's the clearest way I have issues with it. So our pharmaceutical structure is, and we know this now, and this obviously a lot of these things got blown open during COVID. Your doctor makes money off of prescribing you anything. They make money. They make money off your procedures. They make money off of your medicine. They make any treatment. Let's really broaden that, right? Any treatment, the doctor, hospital, or both are making money. They are making money off of you as a patient. And obviously there's the old conspiracy theory of like, oh, they have the cure for cancer and they have all these, but they're never going to do it because they make a lifelong patient out of you. That's why they'll never federally legalize marijuana, because that'll really hurt the pain pill industry and that'll hurt all that type of stuff, right? Which is all legitimate as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That's fucking legitimate.
I mean, yeah.
Anyway, so my issue is the barrier to entry, generally speaking, from what I've read, the barrier to entry in a lot of these hyper left states is so low that it's I don't want to believe this is the truth, but it seems to me that it's like there's not a lot of second thought being given by a lot of, and again, I have to highlight left states, blue states where this is happening, right? And specifically around gender affirming care for children. It seems to me that there's not a lot of checks and balances going on between like, okay, if we're going to start something like hormone replacement therapy, HRT, if we're starting hormone replacement therapy for a kid, why isn't there like because that is such, because me personally, I had to get on TRT, which is for people listening, testosterone replacement therapy. I had to get on that beginning of last year because I got my blood work done. It turns out I had the fucking test levels of a 6-year-old man. Lord knows why. I choose to not blame it on the vaccine. Because I think that's just that's a very blanket way of saying it. But I'm open to the idea, but I just choose not to. For whatever reason, biologically, that is that's the hand of cards that I was dealt, right? And I need to get back on it, but thankfully my levels have gotten better to where they were when I started. But I remember getting on it and then finally getting, to make a long story short, getting my doses to where it should be. And I was not blasting TRT by any, or testosterone. I was on tescipionate. I was not blasting it by any stretch of the imagination. I was actually on lower levels than some children get on as they're transitioning female to male, as they're transitioning. And I remember the effects of that. I've literally never felt better in my fucking life. But I take that as I'm getting more of what my body is supposed to have innately. So any effects of that I'm getting are just highlighted versions of what I was supposed to be experiencing anyway, right? So I know the effects firsthand of taking testosterone artificially. I couldn't fucking imagine what it could be like giving HRT to a small boy or girl. Either fucking way, right? So, but anyway, getting back to the money of it. Because this is such a popular thing right now, and it's in the culture no matter where you go, red state, blue state, wherever, it's everywhere. And so I can't help but think that doctors and medical institutions are taking advantage of this. I can't imagine they're not, with no real care for what it looks like afterwards. And then what's really concerning to me is you're seeing this growth in a community that are, I think the common name for it is detransitioners, is you're seeing this community grow and grow and grow. And so many of those people are coming out about their story, Or even like Candace Owens had a really good conversation with and I still fuck up the term, so I'll just say it like this: a person that transitioned from male to female, and had a conversation, and they said right off the bat, the lady said right off the bat that or Candace Owens said it, and they echoed it, that they have no desire to transition back, to detransition. Right? They are going to stay. Like they are committing to what they've done and living their life that way. But they just talk about their horrible fucking experience. And what's scary is just like the common denominators are there, where, to make a long story short, they were quickly given treatment. They were quickly diagnosed, quickly given treatment, quickly put through the surgery, quickly put through multiple surgeries, and then kind of just like left in the dust when it came to let's call it aftercare, right? The maintaining of it all. And I really worry that, let me stick on the financial part of it. I think it is exploitation of people that have a legitimate concern, right? Like that have a legitimate concern, whether it's a kid that thinks that they're not supposed to be the gender they were born as, or it's an adult saying, "Hey, I've dealt with this for however long, and I just don't. This is not the way my brain works," and they go about their business and they do it medically. So the financial part of it's my first issue with it. The second issue that I have with it, and again, you're seeing this a lot in the blue states, is, and you can kind of extrapolate this out to sexuality in general being exposed to children. I never really had like sex ed in school. Like the sex ed that I had was fucking horrible. I went to a Lutheran school.
Oof.
And one of the only things that I remember is that we did sex ed for like a week. Yeah, like a week. And they separated us in the classrooms. And I was at a very small Lutheran school here in Albuquerque, right? It was like, because in most high school or most middle schools, it's the teachers stay in their one classroom and kids rotate. This place was so small that the teachers rotated. There was one class for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, right? I'm not making this up. So they separate us into fucking separate groups. And we had the head pastor come in for a segment. And I forget the fucker's name. And he looked like Squidward, I swear. He comes into the classroom and he's talking to us about sex ed. And the only thing I remember, because obviously he's highlighting the Christian, the religious aspect of like, why do you date? Why do you marry? What's the all this shit, right? And he goes, you all, talking to a room of specifically men or boys, because we're fucking like 11 at this point, 11 or 12. He takes out a fucking Ziploc bag and it has one Oreo in it. And he goes, "This Oreo is your wife." And we're sitting there like, okay, like we're following.
You're
like,
trying, right?
Yeah, it's like, this is your wife. When you two have sexual intercourse for the first time, this is what this is like. He opens the Oreo, he licks the side with the cream in it, puts it back together. And he goes, "Look, that's a pretty solid cookie still. But what happens if I take this cookie and I walk up to each and one of you and I undo it and I let you lick it, put it back together. Take it apart, you lick it, put it," and he does that whole thing. It's like, do you want a wife that is licked as much as this Oreo has been? And I remember sitting in the back going like, someone hurt you. Like there is some legitimate like deep-rooted sexual, like you got cheated on bad. Like you got cheated on.
That's why you became a pastor. And we're like, damn, this women thing, not for me. I can't be gay, so I might as well teach children about Oreos.
For real. So I remember that was the extent of my sex ed. But the reason I bring that up is like I recognize that sex ed is not the best in this country by any margin, and we don't really know how to do it because it's been so taboo, and it's so, for the culture getting so sexualized, teaching it to children is a thing. Personally, I and this is just how I feel politically anyway, the more you can leave to the family, the better. Because as much as people want to say the American family is getting broken and American social structures are falling apart, I still believe that I still believe the majority of families in America do love their own family unit. They love their kids. They want the best for their kids. I still believe that, right?
Absolutely.
And that is a choice. No matter what happens, that is still going to be a choice. And so I think stuff like that should be left to the family. However, when I see stuff in California, for instance, where they are having sexually graphic images in their books being shown to kids of like 3rd and 4th grade, or it's like California recently passed a law where they've become a before I get to that. So just the over sexualization of the sexualization is being presented to children, and in that same conversation, this is what straight sex is, because I want to include that as well, because I don't think straight sex should be taught to little kids either, right? Is what straight sex is. This is what gay sex between two gay men, between two lesbians. This is what I don't even know what term they would use, whether it's gender dysphoria or it's transgender, what being a transgender is, or what the qualifiers to be a transgender is. I don't think any of that should be taught to kids. And like, if like, I don't know. And again, maybe this is optimism, like the optimistic part of me. But if I could go back to being a kid, I would probably do 1,000 different things before it's asking about sexuality. Like, I want to know fucking what Batman movie is the best. I want to know what the Cowboys used to live like. What's an astronaut? Like, what the fuck what are these different types? Like, I used to play with Barbies as a kid. Like, what the fuck are these different Barbies like? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to learn about kid shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to learn about bears fighting. You know what I mean?
Fuck
like some stupid kid shit. Like, I don't want to, like, I wouldn't even, kids don't think to ask about that. And I think the extent of it personally is, you know, what, like, it's like, why do I want to be around girls so much for a little boy that's straight, right?
Yeah.
It's like, why do I want to be around girls? Like, why do I want to pick on the girls so much? And then someone has to sit you down, preferably your parent, like, well, honey, later in life, you're going to that whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, just exposing kids to these over-sexualized things or these like adult thematics. Like, I don't think that's good for kids. And I think one interesting thing is there used to be for the rating system for movies back in the day, a very common descriptor you would see in PG-13 films and some PG, but in PG-13 films where it's like a descriptor where it's like violence, partial nudity, some language, but it would also be thematic elements. And what that meant was like, the characters in the movie talk about sexual topics. They talk about violence. They talk about drugs. They talk about more adult themes that maybe kids under the age of 13 aren't ready for, right? They're not ready to digest those type of thematic elements. And so I guess one of the last things, I'll cap it here, is, you know, when you have it being so popularized, and I'm not saying this as an inverse to like that transgender people should be demonized, not at all. However, in the same respect, I don't think straight people need to be fucking exalted for being straight. I don't think the transgender movement needs to be exalted for being transgender, because truly, if that's who you're born as, cool. Those are your factory settings, dude. Like those are the
why go against them, right?
Right.
Like,
well, why go against them? But also, you shouldn't be exalted for just existing.
No.
And I blanket that for everybody. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
And so, because of that, you have it at the children's level where it's like, okay, if I'm a young kid, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade, that type of shit, and it's like, oh, well, I see that like kids my age and older are getting celebrated for being transgender. Why shouldn't I do that? Why shouldn't I align myself with that? And that's something you're seeing in these hyper blue states. Like, it's actually getting fucking recorded, which is scary to me, because why is that shit prevalent enough? Or why is this movement being so put under the microscope to where data like that needs to be collected. And the last thing I'll say, it's a conjoined to that, is California recently passed a law where it's like, which I think is ridiculous in so many different ways, where it's like, basically, if you're a kid in California, you can come out as transgender, and members of the school system will help you go through the transitionary process without your parents knowing. And then to add on that, they became in that bill, they made California like a quote sanctuary state for transgenders, to where it's like you can fucking leave your house, like you can just ditch, run away. And if you make it to California, you now are protected under the state, and the state is obligated to do that for you. And that is, in my opinion, so wrong on so many different levels. Because why the fuck? What kid loves living at home 100% of the time?
No kid. Yeah.
None of them.
Yeah, no.
Exactly none of them. Mm-hmm. So what if they get... Because I don't know what the fuck is in Cheerios these days, or these fucking mini wheats, because these kids these days are built different.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. They are maturing faster. I saw, not even today, but on a regular basis in this neighborhood, I am seeing, I shit you not, these kids are like 10 or 12 years old, and they look 15 and 16 driving vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Not like ATVs, but fucking vehicles. Mm-hmm. And these kids can't be older than 10 or 12 fucking years old.
No.
So it's like, okay, what if and it's very extreme, and I don't think it's happening very much, but the potential of that happening and it being put into law, that concerns me. And again, going back to an original conversation about exploitation, I really believe that right now we're seeing a mass exploitation of the transgender community, and it's going to come back to haunt so many people that not only put these laws forward and exalted them for it, but people who felt deeply in their heart that they are transgender and that they need to go through these replacement therapies and through these surgeries. And 15, 20 years down the line, there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse. And I feel for these people, because these are a lot of these surgeries. No, as far as I know, these transition surgeries, there's a lot of damage that is done to you that's permanent. And that's what worries me, is like, if you're a grown adult, do it. Seriously, go do it. And I truly couldn't care less. It's when it's specifically on kids. Like, and I know this is a very tired argument, but it's true. We don't let kids drink. We don't let kids smoke fucking tobacco or chew tobacco or smoke pot. We don't let them get tattoos. They can't even go die for the military-industrial complex. But we're going to let them have life-altering surgeries and treatment plans, and that is what concerns me.
Okay.
And then at the same time, because again, I don't believe in absolutes. Mm-hmm. To get real dorky about it, only a Sith believes in absolutes. You know what I mean? Some real Star Wars shit.
For real.
Only a Sith believes in absolutes. I believe that it is more possible than not that there are kids that are born that they think it when they're a kid, just feel off, they feel weird, they don't feel like they're in the right body. They grow up and that mindset never goes away. And maybe that is the thing, right? Maybe it is. I'm not educated enough to say that it's not, right? And with the amount of statistical possibilities in this world, it's ignorant to say that doesn't exist. Is it to the degree that it's happening right now, especially in the short amount of time that it's been happening over the last 15, 20 years? I don't know. And again, it's the money part of it and the exploitation part of it. Those are the big indicators to me that something is up.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
I think that's totally fair, and I really appreciate that. And I don't think anybody that's trans is really mad at people for being like, let's take care of the children. What about the children? Let's make sure that they're okay. I don't think that there's anybody really that okay, let's just put this out there, right? With whether you're a doctor, you're a trans, you're straight, you're a politician, you're a professor, a trans person is a human being, and a human being is capable of the worst. And that goes throughout doctors, right? So there are doctors out there that are obviously doing things that aren't right. Yeah. There's politicians that are doing things, straight people, trans people. I promise you, there's some shitty ass fucking trans people out there. That's just humans, right? Where we have the capability of being the worst, and so that happens. Yeah. Now, if I'm correct, I think there's only 3 to 4 states that you are allowed to, as a child under 18, and it starts, I think, in most states at 16. That you're allowed to get any kind of top surgery. So let's talk about, when we talk about surgeries with trans people, there's facial surgery, there's top surgery, and then there's bottom surgery, right? Now,
so when you say facial, this is the question I have about that. So facial surgery, is that in the same camp as like I don't know what the exact term of it is, but it's basically procedures that people have done, face included, but I feel like it happens over the body as well, other than your sex organs, that alter you to make you look more like the gender you are transitioning to. Is that kind of the same camp?
It's like secondary and first qualities of your sex, right? So like first qualities would probably be more of like your genitalia, your chest, and then there's like second qualities, right? Right, like your facial shape, your Adam's apple, these things that people go into. But so there's only 3 states, from what I understand. That's New York, California, and I think, if I'm correct, Michigan. Or, yeah, it's Michigan, I'm pretty sure. Those are like the 3 places that offer the most when it comes to healthcare providing trans things. You have to be 16, and that's the only thing that you're allowed to get is top surgery. So that would be whether you would either add boobs or take them away, right? That's kind of, from what I understand, the only thing that they really allow. Now, gender confirmation, the process for children starts really just about using their name. So it's, a pretty common thing for a child to be like, I'm a dog now, right? And it's like, right, that's a big thing that we do as like people were like, oh, it can't be real, right? But it's like, when your child's that way, you're just going to play along. You're going to have that thing that's going to make them feel good. They're going to have that connection with you. So if that person's like, I'm no longer Sarah, I am Sam.
Well, because you heard about I think it was in the Army, that Army like colonel or lieutenant colonel that finally retired. And then he was like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm really into puppy play and I'm a furry. And Commander Wolf or whatever out. And it's like, damn, what the fuck is going on? That's a whole other conversation, but that's what you made me. I don't want to get into that, but like you made me think of that. That's funny. Okay, so anyway.
I think that is funny as well. I don't really fully understand that whole dynamic. It's not for me to understand. As long as you're 2 consensual adults doing that, like, cool. If you want to be like, talk to like a dog, that's cool, but that's not me, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I was reading, it was some kind of podcast, and they were talking about that, and I really agree with them. He's kind of a scary dude. If that dude came to kill you, you'd be terrified.
That's so I don't know if it was in a pod, but that was in Shane Gillis's new special.
Oh, I love Shane Gillis.
He was like,
yes, you're right. It's his new special.
Where he was like, yeah. Like, could you imagine that guy dropping a bomb on you? Like, if he's able to, what the fuck? But anyway, you're saying, so the original subject you're on, aside from that, was, so children, being children, if your kid comes up to you and says, hey, I'm no longer Sarah, I am Sam.
Let's say Sam, right? That's the first step to gender affirming care.
Okay, continue. I'm going to check cameras and shit.
No, yeah, you're good. So that's just kind of the general start to that, is that we want to just make sure that person's being called the name that they want to. And that's like just with anybody, right? Even cis people change their name on a constant basis and want to go by different things, or maybe do nicknames or whatever. So that's the first step. Now, the next step is making sure, so the next step would be probably using the right pronouns and just kind of going along with what they're saying. We want to, without trying to change anything, we're letting this kid kind of decide, right? That's autonomy for the child in this way. We're letting this kid decide kind of where they want to be in this moment. We're not necessarily, most, if not all doctors, there's probably some fucking dickheads out there that are like, oh, you're trans, let's get you on this, let's get you on this, let's get you on this, without even like the state's consent. But most times you have to be a certain age to do that. The only thing that they'll do for a child, and I think it's probably around the age of like 9 I think at the earliest, and it's very, very early. And I agree that's kind of early, but also there's a lot to this. But so would be hormone blockers.
Yeah, then I kind of clump that together with HRT.
Yeah, I mean it can be considered
a
that
huge issue. Yeah,
but it is not something that's permanent. I could take puberty blockers as a child, let's say from 12 to 18. And 18, I'm finally like, no, I'm a man. I'm going to take testosterone's where I want to be. You take that child off of their hormone blocker, right? They start going through puberty.
Okay, I'm gonna let you finish your thought because you let me finish mine.
Yeah, so they're going. So basically, they're blocking that until they have a chance to think about it. Now, there's also, when it comes to hormone blockers, there are not only cis women and cis girls and cis boys that will sometimes have too much of their original hormone. So that could be estrogen or that could be testosterone, depending on how you're born, right? And for some boys, they'll develop tumors because they have too much testosterone. So this medication was originally introduced so that they could lower the amount of testosterone that this baby's having, destroying that tumor, and then slowly letting them get back on it.
Okay, yeah. So just to add context to that, so it's so fucked. So a huge, because it goes inversely, it goes both ways. So a side effect of having low testosterone is cancer. And then a side effect of having too much testosterone can also be cancer.
Cancer, yeah.
And it can also be like, they could be benign tumors, but they can also just be like life-threatening stuff like cancer. And then, like, I had this girl in Alexandria, I think like 2 months ago, a month and a half ago or so, around there. She's talking about her father. He's an amazing guy. I got the chance to meet him. I don't say it like that. He's still alive, but he has prostate cancer. And this is something she said on the podcast. The way they treat the prostate cancer, because it attaches to testosterone, is they use this medicine that is a hormone blocker to basically tank his test levels to like next to nothing. So the cancer has nothing to attach to. Now, granted, you couldn't fucking know this because the guy acts like a 20. He has more energy than I do.
Yeah.
Like, the dude bounces off the damn walls. Like, he's a blast to hang out with. Anyway, just to add context to that, because you're completely right.
There are, so there's, I mean, we got to think about, like, HRT in general was originally used for cis people. It was to, like, let's say estrogen HRT, right, was used for cis women so that they wouldn't go through as heavily as menopause, or maybe they didn't want to have menopause as soon as they did. So they did that so that they could have menopause later in life, or maybe they wanted to do that. And so once a child is off of that, right? Now, I don't know a whole lot about like the cancer thing, but obviously if you have we all want people to have good doctors. So we should make sure that we're training good doctors that are taking care of people in a conscious and morality standpoint, is like being good, right? We want that to be happening, whether that you're trans, you're cis, you're whatever, right? We want you to have good medical care, so let's make sure that we're training good doctors. Now, obviously, like I said, we're all human beings, and human beings are capable of the worst. But let's say you do it from 13 to 17, and then you hit 17, and you're like, you know what? I'm okay with the testosterone. You start puberty then. Now, maybe you're a late boomer, but that's not going to stop you from your voice lowering. That's not going to stop you from gaining more muscle if you have testosterone, or the same thing with estrogen. It's not going to stop you from growing that, but you're giving that child that extra little bit of time to really think through it. That's what I feel like when a lot of people are mad about that. They're like, well, why aren't we letting them choose? Why aren't we letting them wait to choose when they're an adult? Giving them that extra couple years where that's not changing. Like, I personally would have loved to not have a deeper voice, but I didn't start HRT until I was 23. I've only been on it for 5 years now, and estrogen doesn't do anything to make your voice higher or lower your voice like testosterone does. Like, you can take testosterone and it'll actually naturally lower your voice. But we're just giving those children a time to think about that while also giving them psychiatry care. Like, also, because these are things too. I mean, For me as an adult, I'm 28, right? If I wanted to go get bottom surgery, which is what we call vaginoplasty, right? That is the inversion. Said that word wrong. Basically, you're just turning your penis inside out. Right. There's a whole lot more to it, but that's the basic.
And there is the episode's fucking hilarious, but the episode of South Park where they deal with that, have you seen that?
No, I would love to.
Oh my God. Basically, I don't want to give too much of it away. And if you remind me, I'll send you what
Please
episode it is. But holy shit, it starts out where I don't want to give it away, but a character goes to a hospital to get the surgery done, and as they don't set you up for it, they don't warn you, but it's in the first 3 minutes. As the doctor is describing to the character what the procedure is, they intercut footage of the surgery happening, like real life, like actual footage.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm not great with, like I'm okay with, like, blood and guts and, like, even, like, real life stuff, but you gotta warn me at least a little bit. But, like, right when it came up, I got fucking, I will not watch that anymore. Like, I'll skip past it. Like, it fucking got me.
It's hard.
How visceral it is.
Oh, yeah.
Holy fuck. Yeah, anyway, continue.
So, I mean, like, for me as a 28-year-old now today to go and get that, right? It's not only you have to get a specific type of hair removal. You don't want any hair down there, so you have to get all of that removed. And it's through electrolysis. Electrolysis is anywhere in the country, the average cost of electrolysis is $100 an hour. You need about anywhere from 20 to 200. So you're already just with the hair removal that you're going to do, and that's for bottom surgery on both sexes, right? That's whether you're getting phalloplasty, which is obviously the creation of a penis, or vaginoplasty, the creation of the vagina. I have to spend anywhere from $2,000 to $20,000 on hair removal. Then I have to not only be in therapy for 2 years, I have to have talked to a therapist that knows about this, that has told me all of the adverse effects, that knows all of these things about this. I have to find someone like this, right? This is a thing that I have to go out and search for. I have to be in there for 2 years. I have to pay for another 2 years of therapy. Then I have to get a letter from that therapist, a letter from a psychiatrist, and a letter from my doctor to even be considered to do a consultation. This is just talking to the doctor finally. This is finally finding a surgeon. And this is if surgeons are even going to work with you, right?
And is this in the state of New Mexico?
This is pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
There's a guideline. It's called the W path, and it's basically a bunch of doctors that have peer-reviewed studies about how we're going to handle this, and that's the world. This is how any country that's giving trans care medically follows these rules. And so these are rules that are set for everybody, no matter where you are. I mean, if you go, you can obviously probably avoid a lot of this. If you go to, like, Thailand, or if you go to, like, Mexico, you can probably, it's going to be cheaper also, but not safe. And only because it's not safe is because if you're 20,000 miles away from your doctor and something happens afterwards, like you're saying, you're just leaving that person to basically rot.
Well, there's a reason why, despite the crippling faults of our medical system, there's a reason why people still come to America to get procedures done.
No, yeah, we have some of the best doctors. Yeah, I mean, and so it's a process. From the beginning of my transition, have been trying to kind of make that happen, and it's been the hardest thing, I think, in my life to make. It literally destroys me to, like, even, like, try to figure it out, just because it is so much that at this point it's like, okay, well, I don't have that extra cash to go get all of these things done just to get the pre-op done, right? And it's a little bit easier for, like, getting your breast removed or a breast added. It's a little bit different than that. But even those, right? So even if I, right today, cut off my tits that I grew with estrogen and then went back on a heavy dose of estrogen, they would regrow. Yeah, I would have some scars and it wouldn't be the best. But obviously it's not something that's permanent. Obviously the bottom surgery is, right? We don't want somebody to do something that's permanent. If they don't want to do it, we have to talk to them. So children aren't even allowed to do that. Like, bottom surgery is not something that they do. They're not doing hysterectomies unless it is life-saving. They're not doing hysterectomies or orchiectomies, which is the removal of your testicles and or your ovaries.
Yeah.
They're not doing that until you're 18. They're not changing any part of your body besides something that you can get fixed or redone if you really needed to. Now, with the hormone blockers, it's really just giving someone a chance, right? And there's already medical benefits that are to that. So why not give a child that's not going to affect them, right? Because we're talking about not sexualizing children in general. So why would we care if that girl decided to grow boobs during her teenage years or not? Or if that guy decided to have a lower voice or not? And they waited till they were 18 to really make that decision. Are you not giving that person the extra little bit of time while also giving them therapy and psychiatry help to get them to that? Because no one, I mean, in my experience, I have not had anybody tell me, you need to do this. You need it. This is all my decision. This was my decision 100%. And again, it's like you're talking about like leaving it up to the family, right? And that's where a lot of like the problems that a lot of trans people have with a lot of the anti-trans legislation towards like all of these things is you're taking that ability away from the family to decide what's good for them and their kid because you're telling them that's now illegal. So you're taking away rights from people, I think is like the big thing that I think a lot of people there, everyone wants children to be safe. And if not, you're kind of a fucking psychopath in my opinion. But I don't think they wouldn't give a child something that's going to be irreversible. Like exactly the same thing. We're not giving children tattoos. We're not letting them drink. We're not telling them that they have to do all of these things, even though they're going to, right? And that's why sex ed is important, whether it's straight, gay, or not, is because it's sex ed is about safety. It's about making sure that this kid knows that there are repercussions for having sex unsafely. I think that's where we really need to be focusing on trying to push sex ed in this country. And yeah, does a 12-year-old need to know all of these crazy things about sex? Probably not, but you should probably teach the kid to know how to do consent. And a lot of like younger children that do get taught sex ed, it's all about consent. I mean, I've watched videos of online or of classes, and it's just like, hey kids, if you went up to someone and you were like, hey, can I have that piece of extra candy? And the kid said no. You have to respect that. That's consent. That's where that's like kind of going. You're teaching these like it's small pieces like you do with math. You're going like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, right? You're kind of and then you go into the heavier stuff once you get in later. It's about just trying to set that those children up for success in those things. And I get it. I mean, I think it's important that we teach teenagers, 14, 15, 16-year-olds how to have gay sex. I didn't get taught that, which put me in danger, right? And that's not like my mom's fault. It's not anyone's fault, but I had to learn myself. I had to look that up. And if I didn't even think about that being a thing, I wouldn't have even thought about it. And that can put me in danger for sexually transmitted diseases. But knowing how to have it safely not only increases the pleasure that I may have had as a 15, 16-year-old. Not that I was really doing any of that. I didn't have sex with a man until I was like 18. And I remember being the time that I did it. And that's not everybody, but I don't think anybody wants to like, no one's getting surgeries that are that crazy. And I think, yeah, I mean, I personally can't tell a parent, no, you can't have that discussion with your child. And if that's what you guys think is right, I mean, there's literally 16-year-old girls, cis women getting breast augmentation all of the time, getting their nose fixed, getting their cheeks fixed. Plastic surgery is something that like younger people do all the time.
Which, quite frankly, in the same way that, and I'll expand on this when you're done, but I just want to add that, like, you're completely right. Parents are allowing their kids to do that, and I classify that as child abuse as much as I classify top or bottom surgery on children in general.
Absolutely.
I think the any type of, and not to be ugly about it, but the type of mutilation that is to that growing body, like that is doing that kid a disservice, specifically speaking on the plastic surgery shit. And that's a whole other conversation we can have at a later date for sure. But I just to like kind of co-sign that.
No, please, yeah.
To co-sign that, I classify that as fucking child abuse too. And I think anybody with a sensible brain would classify that as child abuse. You know what I mean? That's fucking bananas to me. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, and I just don't think it's happening. It's such a rare circumstance, I feel like, that a 16 or 17-year-old is getting these things. And first, most doctors won't work with children that age because there is so many eyes looking on people right now. It's so rare. And most of the time, if it's an orchiectomy or a hysterectomy, it's life-saving. That's the only time that they really do it to children. There's no one's just taking your children's fucking reproductive organs out of their body unless it's going to save their lives. Now, there has to be, again, that whole process that even as an adult is hard for me to get, right? This is an adult that is consenting, that is doing all of these things, and it makes them feel good. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I think we should wait for a lot of that, but it's, I think we're focusing in on the wrong things. We're focusing in on a specific thing that doesn't always happen. Very rarely is a 16-year-old getting breast augmentation. And again, if we're going to focus in on children getting surgeries, then we need to focus on all aspects of that, not just trans children. But we also, if we remove gender affirming care for children in all, let's say the whole United States, there are going to be people that can't access hormone blockers when they actually need life-saving care.
Interesting. Okay.
So if those are you can't give hormone blockers to children, but then a kid comes along and because of the testosterone now has that and has to take that, but they're not allowed. They're physically, they're law-wise, they're not allowed. We're hurting children, right? And so I think, again, if we're going to look at it as it needs to be a discussion between the parents, the doctors, the psychiatrist, and the therapist, and we're pushing for there to be the best version of those type of doctors and those type of medical professionals, and we're making sure that we're not fucking letting people graduate fucking college when they're sociopaths, I think we'll do a lot better. No one wants to like mutilate a child. No one wants to think about it that way, and no one wants to. I don't think so.
You would hope so, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't feel like that. The average person, right? There again, like we said, all people are people, and people are capable of the worst. But we got to like look at like the bigger thing, and we also have to know what the laws are too when we're going to discuss these things. Yeah, there are like New York, I think it's 16. I looked it up. I think California, I think it's like 17, and then Michigan, I think is somewhere around like the middle of those two. So it's kind of 16 and a half, maybe even like on the edge of 18, or even it is just 18. But here in New Mexico, they're not getting any of those things. The first thing there's multiple years of, we're just going to call you Sam, Sarah. We're just going to do that. We're just going to call you Sam. And we're going to be like, he's great. And if that feels good to you and you're happy, we're making a kid happy by having that. Like, and also it's just like, also we shouldn't be focusing on detransitioning or transitioning in general, as long as it's done safely within consensual people and within families and parents, right? But hormone blockers don't happen for a very long time. And it's not anywhere near like, if you're 5 and you're like, start calling me Sarah and my pronouns are she, her now. That's all they're going to do for the first 5-6 years, right? Because you're not dealing with a lot of like hormone stuff in there, but it's giving that kid just the extra little bit of time to make sure that that's what they wanted. We're giving them that chance to decide for themselves without having something start, right? And that creates more like, so let's say, if I was to start hormone blockers at 14, I probably wouldn't have a low voice like I do, which is, I mean, some people think, no, whatever. I wouldn't have my Adam's apple. There would be some like muscle stuff and bone density that I wouldn't have had to deal with that like then people feel really bad about and then go get surgery for, right? Like that then have to remove their Adam's apple or have to like shave down their jaw or do those things. If we can stop them from doing that, they don't even have to go through surgery. They just got that extra little bit of 5 years to decide what they wanted for themselves. And it's the same thing that I think we'll see when we see humanity homogenize and it's just we're all human beings. We're going to see, I believe, personally, cis people take the opposite hormone because it makes them feel good. Why do you take testosterone? I asked my dad. My dad takes TRT. And I asked him one day, I was like, because we were having this conversation about me being on hormones, and he thinks that I should be, maybe if I was just on a lot of testosterone, I'd feel a lot better, right? Instead of just being on the estrogen. And I was like, well, why do you take testosterone? And he said, because it makes me feel like me. I feel more like myself when I feel like I have testosterone in my body. And I think that's something that everybody really needs to think about in this moment is like, whether you're taking estrogen or you're taking testosterone, whether you're cis or trans, it's something that makes you feel good about yourself. Like you were telling me, that's one of the words that you said is, I've never felt better in my life about where I was, right? And so that made you, that's gender euphoria for you as a cis man. If we're gonna allow people to do that and feel good and replace that and not just let nature take its course, because naturally we're low testosterone, right? Naturally I may be blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But we're deciding what's good for us, and as an adult, right? That's the difference that we're talking about. And I think that like it's very rare that we're ever giving surgeries to people, and if it's top surgery, they're the same age as a cis person getting that same surgery, right? And so if we're gonna attack trans children for getting top surgery at 16, 17, then we're going to need to really, like, again, like you were talking about, it's not good for children to do that. Let them be 18. Let them think about those things if that's what they really want, right? So it's just like we're giving children more time to really process what's happening with themselves, and I think that is the healthiest way to do it. It's not for everyone. There are also trans people that don't take hormones. I know plenty of trans women that don't take hormones at all, that don't have any desire to. I know trans men that do that. And are we going to, like, yeah, we can go into what makes a person a man and what makes a person a woman and all of these other things, and we can go into all of that. But I think at the end of it, we're really just trying to, it'll be different in 20 years. We'll have a different way of approaching this. And it's just making sure that people have access to it and really making sure people have access to mental health care. We can change so much of everything that's going on if we're just talking to people and people are talking about their feelings. Because maybe they do feel like they don't belong. And maybe that was the first thing that made sense to them, right? But maybe we can talk to them a little bit more to figure it out. And maybe that is it. Maybe you are dealing with, and now in the medical field, it's less about gender dysphoria, more about gender incongruence. Basically means the same thing. People are just trying to make sure that we're talking about it and we're including everybody in those things. And there's some things that I'm like, I'm not going to get involved, but I really think that like most people need to understand that they're not doing that to children. I really want that to be a big part of this is like, we might have a couple of circumstances where that happens, but we're also doing that to cis children too, to save their lives. And if this is going to save someone's life, if out of everything that you tried to work on, right, you got that kid into therapy, you got that kid into a psychiatrist, you tried all of these other things to make them happy, and that was the last thing that really did make them happy, and then they changed their mind at 18, but they just got that extra little bit of time where that it's not permanent. I mean, the only thing that really is permanent, it would be bottom surgery, because of the same thing with facial surgery. Doctors fuck up facial surgery all the fucking time. You get botched surgery, right? And so you go back to get another surgery and you fix that surgery. So it's not necessarily permanent. It's more expensive. I think one of the bigger problems that I see is that we're giving trans people access to medical care, which is great. Really love like that. We all have access. We should all have access to that. But what really frustrates me is that like a trans woman can go get breast augmentation, or a transgender man can go get breast removal, but a cis woman that has too big of boobs that hurts their back can't go get that same thing. That's where the divide happens that I'm really frustrated with. So I think we've got to work on making sure that everybody has access to medical care. And once we do that, we'll see less of these things. And it's just, but I don't want to look at it as mutilation for myself or like anyone else, because it's, I mean, yeah, it might be to you. You might not ever want to change anything, and you see someone changing something big, but you're not them. You don't know where their mental health was. You don't know where they were going. You don't know what conversations their parents had. You don't know the people that they tried to be around. But I think most people don't want to ruin anybody's life. I don't think a doctor goes into medical school being like, I'm going to ruin some people's lives. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would like, maybe there are some really fucked up people, but I would like to assume that
the way I think it happens personally, and I think it's the same way with corrupt doctors, it's corruption in general.
Yeah.
I think it's corrupt doctors, corrupt politicians, fucking gangsters, man. I think what happens is they go in looking for they're interested in the field, and whether it's medicine, politics, I do apply this to criminals too. I think they're looking for They have an interest in a certain way of life. They want community. They find that community. And then somewhere along the way, they are either shown a path to financial success and financial advantage. Let's put it that way. They're either shown the pathway to that, or someday they're shown an absurd amount of money. And because people like, a lot of people would like to think, I would like to think that I'm not corruptible. I've never seen $500,000 in one place.
Yeah, me neither.
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
I've never seen $1 million in one place. And so I don't know what I would do in that moment. I would like to think I stick to my guns. I stick to my morals.
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the other hand, depending on what we're talking about here, we're human. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, I don't think I'm shooting myself in the foot by saying that. I think I'm just being human and being honest and thinking, I know what issues I have in my life. I know where I stand financially. I have enough, how do I put it? I have enough perspicacity to see where the world is going. 500 G's ain't that bad. But what's on the other end of that? What am I getting asked to do? You see what I'm trying to say, right?
Absolutely.
I think where you and I differ in this conversation is I don't think kids should be given as much autonomy as they're given these days.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because, and I can only speak from my own personal experience and seeing with my other friends, how we all grew up.
Absolutely.
I mean, your brain is still developing. For men, I think it's like 25, 26. And for women, it's into like 24 around.
Yeah, 23, 24.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that women have like a year or two edge on men, right? So, personally, I think kids, I don't believe in helicopter parenting. I don't believe in like because I was like super, like my mom was like on me all the time. Where are you going? What are you doing? You don't get to go anywhere.
Same,
that
yeah.
type of shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's the answer, but I don't think laissez-faire is the answer as well. I think there's something in the middle. And I think that, so you brought up the example of like, what if your kid, not toddler age, but like small child comes up and you've named your kid Sarah, but now it's Sam, right? The issue I take with allowing that is, so, because you also brought up the example of kid acting like a dog, right? Well, it's like, okay, so what could this mean long term? Especially with it, again, I think a lot of this has to do with the framework of the social conversation that's going on right now and is not going anywhere anytime soon, you know? So I think it's like, okay, if I accept or if I fuck around with my kid and I'm like, oh yeah, you're a dog, dude, whatever, woof, woof, go eat your fucking cereal, right? There is a less likelihood of that having a long-term effect than allowing my kid to be called a different name that is assigned to a gender that they feel like they are. Because, and again, like I said before, and I want to reiterate this for the conversation shaking for people listening, as you go down the line, maybe there are people that, and I feel like you include yourself in this group, where it's like, I started thinking this way, I've been thinking this way, I turned 18, kept thinking this way, and now I'm 28, I'm still in, this is how my brain works, dude, and this is the way it is. There is that category. But I think on the other hand, I think there's a majority where, and maybe it does get affected, maybe it's not, but if you allow the kid to change their name and effectively be treated and identified as the opposite gender, I think that leads down the path to where they probably would not have gone and turned out like just as mentally stable if they weren't encouraged to be Sam, not Sarah. You know what I mean? And that's one of the first things I would say about that. But bringing this back to the autonomy thing, kids need guidance, good sound guidance, whatever the fuck that means anymore, but they need guidance in general. And I think there has to be like and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but just for the purpose of the conversation, I think there needs to be a baseline of reality. This is your name, this is your gender, this is like your starting line. And where you go from here, it is my responsibility as a parent, proverbially, because I don't have kids. It is my responsibility to make sure you make it to at least 18 by law. It's my responsibility to make sure you make it to 18 with as little issues as humanly possible. It's my job to let you make mistakes. It's my job to expose you, to allow you to be exposed to the world. But when we start talking about things like changing your baseline of where you're starting from, I think that's where the parental needs to step in. And again, I really do think, because what you said at the end there, I completely agree with. This is not a governmental thing. I think blanket laws that work in absolutes about anything, whether it's the transgender conversation, abortion, gun rights, anything like that, blanket stuff is not a good thing. I'm in the minority about gun laws where I think if you're a felon, there needs to be a period of time where it's like, you've been a good boy, you've been a good girl, you should be able to appeal to have your voting rights back. You should be able to appeal to have your gun carrying licenses back, right? To where it's like, okay, maybe you can't buy a fucking handgun because of how concealable it is. Maybe you should be able to buy a hunting rifle. What if you're someone, this is a different conversation, what if you're somebody that made a fucking stupid decision when you were young, and now you're like, I would love to go hunting, but I can't. I like rifle hunting, but I can't because I'm a felon. Not to like talk shit about bow hunting, because two of my roommates fucking love bow hunting, but now I can only bow hunt where I would love to hunt with a rifle.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, I think blanket statements in general, not good. But I think the guidance thing is needed for parents to, I think autonomy, and I think this is how most people raise their kids. Autonomy needs to be given in a slow drip as they're growing up, right? You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, you've demonstrated the responsibility and the comprehension. Well, you've demonstrated the comprehension of what responsibility means enough to let you go out with your friends until 10 o'clock, to drive my car to and from work, to watch a rated R movie, to be exposed to these type of violent or visceral things of life, but your brain can comprehend, okay, this is a violent movie or a sexual movie, but that is the context of what this is. You watch a really graphic documentary. It's like, okay, these things really happened, but here's the context surrounding it. Here's why I'm being shown the violence. That type of stuff, right? And then go back to the brain forming thing. Not a popular opinion either, but I think there is a legitimate conversation around raising the drinking age, raising the age you can buy marijuana in states where it's legal. I think it should be legal federally, but whatever. The age you can buy substances that alter your mind. The ability to vote, right? The voting age should be raised, I think, because of how much we know now about neuroplasticity, the amount of knowledge we now know about the brain developing and the ways in which it develops and what can happen at a young age. And you're right, there are cases where young people can get put on hormone replacement therapies, and while their development gets stunted for that period of time, when they get off, it can start to come back. The pituitary gland can start really developing those hormones. It takes a bit longer and it's going to be a little rocky, but you can kind of get there. But there's other cases where it just doesn't happen, right? Because not every human body is the same. Obviously, that's why this conversation is happening.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think this is one of these subjects where we just truly don't know, and there's not enough data. And I really do think that going back to the autonomy and the guidance thing, parents need to keep their kids, it is in their best interest, I really believe this, to keep them on their biological track until they're at least 18, so that their body can go through the motions, develop the way it's supposed to. And I see where you're coming from, especially when it comes to like, hey, again, to you, because you're obviously using your own experience, where it's like, hey, like I started here, I've been here, I've ended here, I'm existing here, and now, in hindsight, I wish I could have done A, B, and C so that D, E, and F are a lot cheaper on me financially. I totally understand that, and the way you, honestly, I should have said this in the front, but the way you explained all of that, that's probably the clearest I've ever heard it explained by someone who's actually lived the experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is one of the clearest ways I've heard that explained. So kudos to you.
I've thought about it a lot. I mean, it's an important topic for me. I mean, I really care about people. And like, for me, I mean, I knew it at 11. I remember being in my mom's room and being like, I want to be a girl.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, no, absolutely. Like, like her brain starts to frizzle out. And it's like, and yeah, I mean, did it really affect me too much until I was like 20? And like, I was like, this is really a thing. I need to figure this out. Like, this is something that I'm thinking about even more constantly. I mean, it wasn't like a thing that I was like every day. I was like, as a child, I was like, this is what I am. And I'm not going to be able to do that. It was just like, oh, I'm feeling these things. And like, but having like a psychiatrist or like a thing just in that moment, whether my parents felt it or not, would have been important for me. I would have learned a little bit more about myself so that when I am an adult, I'm more formed. I'm ready for bigger decisions. But I agree. I mean, I don't think we're going to know. There's not a perfect way of handling everybody's situation.
Not at all. Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I just really wanted people to know. And I think that's one of those things that where the manipulation of politics comes in, is they're manipulating the right and the Republicans and parents to be fearful of this. We need to move away from that. It's important to criticize any science. It's important to criticize any idea. How are we going to get to
science?
It is, right? So we have to have it peer reviewed. We have to have thoughts. We have to have conversations about these things. They're important. But anytime we have to look at history, and anytime that a governmental agency has gone, here is fear, we're gonna now it's controlling. It's a controlling aspect of someone, because it's a need for survival.
So I see what you're saying, and I agree with that in a broader scale, where the organic fear comes from, and it's not government. Well, I mean, it starts governmental, but it's an organic. I call it an organic fear because of what parents are seeing. Because the way the school system was, and we see this now more than ever, the way it was founded, I mean, literally I forget his first name, but the head fucking Rockefeller that helped make the modern school system in America is that we need workers, not thinkers. That's a direct quote, is workers, not thinkers. And so, as that has evolved, if you're the average American family and you have a kid, you send them off to school, you go to work, you really only see your kid the 45, so let's be like an average of 45 minutes before the school bus gets them, and then like the 3 hours, 2.5 hours at night before all y'all go to bed.
Absolutely.
Or at least till you put your kid to bed so you can finally have a cocktail and fucking chill out, right? So the majority of your kid's life is spent at school. And if you know that your school, the school that you're sending your kid to, is teaching your kid, and this is, again, to kind of like generalize, teaching your kid things that either you don't think should be a part of a curriculum, or you just flat out disagree with as a household, parents have every fucking right to be like, that is wrong. I see where this goes. This is not good. And I think that goes back to the autonomy and the guidance thing, that kids shouldn't have it. And they need the guidance from their parents to be like, hey, we're going to keep you on the track of relative normalcy until you get to the legal age of 18. And then even then, I think good parents continue to guide their kids until they fucking die. But when they become an adult, it's like, okay, if you are really headstrong on this and you truly believe this is the trajectory that your life is going, let's figure out how it looks. And like I was saying earlier, I totally understand. Well, not understand because I haven't lived it, but you explained it very clearly why your mindset and your opinion on it and your own point of view is where it is because of what you've experienced, which is the most valid experience. It is yours, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It makes perfect fucking sense to me. But to call it the general rule, which I don't think you're doing, but to call it, because a lot of other people are doing that, I don't think that, and again, it's an opinion because we just don't know. I don't know if that's how things are going with a lot of people that go through with all this. And I'm not saying that you're wrong about the ages of the surgeries in California and New York, but what I read is that in California, New York, and Oregon, there are cases of minors as young as 12 getting these operations done. And that ain't fucking right. I think we can agree on that.
I mean, I think so.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
fucking right.
probably not through, not through like insurance. It's probably something that the parent was like, okay, we'll do this. Like
it's through insurance and it's through doctors.
Yeah,
and that's the issue. And then again,
and I'd love to learn more about this. You know, I think that's an important. I mean,
am I saying that's like what's happening everywhere? No. But the way that I see, let's say specifically California, New York, right? The way that I look at them is the same way that I look at, let's package, because they're so close together, let's package Albuquerque and Santa Fe together and then Las Cruces, right? New Mexico is a blue state. However, the only blue areas in this state are Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Cruces. Rural New Mexico, about as red as you can get. The problem is because of how population dense those two areas are, that controls the politics.
Absolutely.
And that is how people view the country, is that because of how many people are in New York or California and New York, that is starting to control, well, they are controlling the left side of politics. And as long as super left-wing politicians, which quite frankly, I don't think they believe half the shit they say. They're saying it because of that's what their donors tell them to say. That's what their lobbyists are going for. That is, as long as the left side of the government is in control of the country, that is how the rest of the country is going to go. And there's a majority of the country, both right-leaning and centrist, that are like, we don't fucking want this. Because we just don't fucking want it. It's not what we align with, but because the left side of the political spectrum, which I'm torn on too, because they wave the social justice flag over it, by and large, any criticism of it is you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're a blah, 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 blah. It's like, no. I'm not any of those things. Do those people exist? Yes. Oh, 100% those people exist. And that's, to be honest, that's the short irony of hyper-left people protesting in favor of Hamas. It's like, bro, they would throw you off a fucking building. They would kill you for your beliefs. Do not support these people. Anyway, that is, because of all that happening, that is why a lot of people are like, hey, this isn't like, we're not saying this shouldn't happen. We're just saying like we don't want it to happen for us as a family unit, as like our own household. And then I think sensible people think that. And like you just said, I want to highlight what you said earlier again. This is a conversation and this is a step-by-step process that needs to happen between the family, and if it has to go outside the family, to the provider and the doctors involved. It doesn't need to go to your fucking representative.
No,
it doesn't
absolutely
need to
not.
go to your president, and it certainly doesn't need to go to these three-letter organizations that control these companies effectively through money and influence. So, I don't know. I just
want more people to talk to people. I feel like we'd get, and that's why I want to have this conversation, and I'm thankful to have this conversation with you, and thank you so much for being able to have this conversation with me. It's just important. I think you have to know facts. We have to really, whether that be anything in life, we really have to criticize the facts we're being told. Go read a book. Go read the WPATH guidelines. Go Go read
This is
the
the first
articles
I've
about
ever heard of that, by the way. The W path. This is one of, I haven't felt like this in a while, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is one of the first episodes I've done in a minute. I was like, fuck. If not, we didn't have to do it as a live stream, but I wish I had my buddy here who produces for me. Because like the big benefit of having Joey back there, David and Springer do it sometimes too, but my buddy Joey, who does it a lot, he just sits back there and fact checks.
Yeah, no, I would love that.
Both me and the guest. He'll like, hey, no, you kind of fucked that up. Here's what it actually is. Or hey, no, instead of that, here's what you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, I get what you're saying.
And I'm super down to have like another conversation about this and have somebody here where we can talk about it and even answer people's questions and like really talk about it. I just we need to stop listening to politicians for what they say is truth. And that's whether you're right, left, far right, far whatever. Does not fucking matter. Start looking at these things, right? Yeah, you didn't even know about. I know more than half of these people that they're going to listen to this and be curious about this aren't going to know about the WPATH guidelines, haven't sat there and read it, right? But you need to. Everyone needs to. And yeah, there's different states, and there may have been someone that was 12 that got an orchiectomy. But I don't know the full facts. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, this is exactly what happened. Like, they didn't do these. They didn't do that. They didn't do this, because I just don't know. But I mean, talk to your kids. Yeah, maybe the autonomy is not a good thing, but I think practice autonomy is important. What do you think? Do you want to go to church tonight? Do you want to be around those people? Does that make you feel good? That should be a question you ask your kids. Whether you let them decide that for themselves or you just take their opinion and then you take them to church anyway, that's up to you. But I think we have to, at some point, you're not going to know how to make a decision for yourself unless you're able to. And obviously, like, kids, most teenage boys start watching porn at 13, 12. You know, I know people that had smoked cigarettes starting 12 years old, found the right people in their life that would buy them packs of cigarettes and smoke since they were 12. You know, it happens. Like, I know women that were giving blowjobs at the age of 11. You know, and that's crazy to me. To me, that's
fucking horrifying.
Wild, right? It's wild that we're doing that. So that's why, like, I feel like sex education, facts, knowing the guidelines that we have set, talking about those guidelines specifically. And it's also like, I mean, yeah, we don't want to be social, you know, we got to make sure everybody's happy. That's never going to happen. But I think one thing that Christianity can do, one thing that the political right can do is accept more people, and we'll have a better political system. We'll have a better religious system here in the United States when more people are welcome in those spaces and aren't seen as evil or aren't seen as these things. And yeah, I mean, no one should be, I think if you're out there like protesting and being like the killing of a person is good, you're a bad person. You kind of have a bad way of thinking about something, and we need to talk about that. You need to have a conversation with someone that goes, "Hey, the death of anybody is not okay." Right? Like, we don't want people to die. We want them to be healthy. We want them to be happy. So it's like, I think when people are protesting for a ceasefire, that's important. You're telling the world, you're telling the government that you're with that you don't like this, right? That's a part of being in the United States and having that freedom. But I mean, yeah, you shouldn't be on either side be like, genocide's okay.
Yeah.
Like, ever. I mean, you're really like the worst kind of person. Yeah. And I think majority of people just are like, can we not have war? Like, well, I think that's like the most of it. It's like, why are we fighting in the first place? Why can't you respect the Palestine for living next to you?
Well, and
why is that so fucked up to you?
Well, and that's why that legislative hearing and clips of that got over 1 billion views. And it's like, well, wait a minute. The genocide? You can't go against that?
No, you have to say no. That's not okay.
Because people ask, you know, and that question unfortunately is getting answered more and more since October 7th. The answer to this question is getting answered. How did the Third Reich happen? We've known the answer. It's recorded history on all sides, even on the German side. They recognize how Hitler came to power.
Yeah.
But for modern times where people just aren't, not even 100 years later, but people kind of lost sight of what tyranny looks like, what true fascism looks like, what true evil can look like. I'm sorry, but like, if you can look at the decapitation of 40 infants and say, no, they deserve that, come on, bro. Like, that's not okay. And so
Yeah.
again, it's like, how did the Third Reich happen? How did Hitler come to power? How did Hitler and his regime, how did they convince an entire country of people and then spread this hatred out to the Axis power? How did they convince people that one group of individuals caused the downfall of their country?
Absolutely.
You are looking at it in real time. When institutions of learning and the incubation of true thought and innovation and using young people as a through path, which is how it should be. It's how you train and that's how you empower new generations. When those institutions are allowing these things to happen, you're seeing it. Unfortunately, you're fucking seeing it.
Yeah. There's so many things that I think like politically need to change. I think we got to get some rules in there for those people that are like in Congress and in the Senate.
That's the crazy thing. That's the crazy thing with these to kind of wrap this conversation up with the colleges. It's like, yo, y'all are private institutions. You have the ability to change your own rules.
Oh, yeah.
Now, granted, are you going to piss off some donors? Cool. But if you're going to piss off donors if you're going to piss off donors that are saying that it's okay to, in one way or another, call for genocide, get rid of those fucking donors. Get rid of those donors.
They're not okay. Yeah, no, the death of any group of people should not be.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's not shouldn't be advocated for. It shouldn't be. I mean, it's really like, if anyone's like, I don't want to live next to those people, and it's like, okay, then fucking move. Go away. Or leave.
Or make peace with them.
Or just chill.
Try to.
What happened? What makes you so angry at a person that you have to feel like they can't exist?
Yeah.
Which is wild to me that anyone gets to that point. I mean, I think that in general just needs to be a conversation had with anybody. I mean, if anybody's like, they shouldn't exist, and it's like, okay, well, what?
It's like, you realize that they can feel the same about you.
Yeah,
right?
they're gonna feel the same way. You're gonna start talking about this, and people are gonna be like, "No, this needs to stop happening." You know, I think, we all just need to like do some research and really stop listening to politicians. They need to be fucking capped. Their income needs to be capped. They should not be allowed to fucking inside trade. They shouldn't. I mean, it really should. In my personal, I mean, this semester I actually did a paper about did a bunch of research on this paper for my thesis was like, until everybody has the same resources, we're a broken country. And I feel like one of the first ways of making sure everybody has the same resources is making sure that our political system, like our congressmen and senators, only make what the medium income household made the year before.
That's okay. So that's an interesting way of putting it, because my thought process has always been that if you're truly a representative of your like district, your county, or whatever the fuck that's broken up into, right? If you're representing a group of people, your salary should be based on their GDP.
Absolutely. I mean, you shouldn't be making more than the people that you're representing. I get it. You know, they have a big job. They do a lot and all these things, but it's like,
should you be making more? I personally, if you're going to take, I think your responsibilities should equate your income personally, right? Because you should be rewarded in spade, but should it be like 50x, or should you have the ability to do workarounds to where you're getting bought and paid for to make it 100x what people make? No. Like Grisham, her income I think is like, I don't even think it's six figures. Like, I think it's somewhere between, well, it might be. It's somewhere between 95, 98 and like 105, 110-ish. It's not the highest governor's salary, but it's up there. But her net worth is in the millions.
It's ridiculous. No,
and you tell me that's only based off of really good investment opportunities? Go fuck yourself.
No. I mean, and it's across the board, across the aisle, it's bipartisan, this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and actually when I was doing my research in 2011, the average income was around $59,000 for an average American household. And then their net worth was around, I think, like 70, where the politicians' average net worth was $197,000 for Congress, and their net worth was over $10 million. So that just like this stark divide that's
12 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it was like I picked that specific year because it was a couple of years after like the crash of the economy, and so I really wanted to see what that looked like for everybody as well. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, like if 9,000, you're only worth $9,000 more than what you made that year as an average human being, but your politician is worth millions, like $10 million worth more than what they made that year. There's a problem, right? There's a problem with what we're doing, and if we all just stopped, including Christians, I think Christians would be still one of the most powerful. I mean, not that to say that they're not one of the most powerful religions in the world, but they would continue to hold on if they just loved everybody and let everybody do like in there. It just
they followed their own creed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they actually lived like Christ did, I think I would be in the church. I would probably enjoy it. I'd probably enjoy that little community aspect of that and this like, release of energy to something bigger than me. But it's not where I'm at. And it's not that and also like, even going back to like the religious thing, I want people to realize that like for an omnipotent being, a being that has the capability to make something out of nothing, they're like mentally above us, right? They have this knowledge that is so much more than us, and it's such a humanistic way of thinking to be like, you have to worship me.
I agree.
I don't think that's a God thing. I don't think that's an omnipotent being way of thinking. I think that's such a man thing that like, you have to worship me. You have to be this like I am the everything. Now worship me. And that's
I thought you were saying that from a human perspective, but from an omnipotent perspective, you have to worship. Okay, at a base level, I don't agree, but I don't have a rebuttal, and I have to think about that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna think about that because I don't agree, but other than just what I believe in per Christianity.
Absolutely.
Other than that, I don't have an organic thought as to why. I'm gonna think about that. That's interesting.
It's a hard thought to think about. I mean, it's just like I don't think if you have the capability of making a world, making people, making all of these like things happen instantaneously, you would ever have the need for this lower life form to be like, we love you, we worship you, thank you so much for being there. I think that is such a humanistic way of looking at like only humans want another person to worship them or to have this like admiration. I get
what you're saying, because that's a very human point of view and it's a very human need for adoration. I'm going to think about that.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like it goes against the Bible when we talk about him being like completely void of humanistic emotions and feelings and being, he is a different thing than us, but we're made in his image, right? So that's like, it's so strange. So it's either he is omnipotent, the God of the universe, or he's a man that was able to make people and material, right? So there was like, that's how I look at it.
Well, just listen, just like the rest of this conversation, that is well put. That's very well. I'm going to think about that. And next, I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I would love to be back.
I'd love to have you back because we didn't even get to talk about comedy that much.
No, it was a great conversation. I had so much fun.
This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. This was wonderful.
This was great. Yeah. Where can people find you on social media and all that? So
social media right now, it's just going to be Instagram and TikTok at June Opal Comedy.
Sick.
Yeah.
Well, I want you to continue your comedy.
Well, thank you. I'm not going to stop.
And I'm telling you that Kinnison-esque.
Oh, that's so funny that I've been getting that so much.
You went on like I don't know how to do that, but lean into that because
cool.
That was fucking awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a new character that I've been working on. I have like this like very anxious like avoidant like this is horrifying to be on stage, and then there's like the manic version of me where I'm like I'm all over the place. I'm like wow, But yeah, so I'm like trying to become well-rounded and as a comedian for sure. Yeah.
I'm very, very happy to see you continue to do it.
Yeah.
This was like I said, this was a great conversation.
Thank you. And I had a wonderful time doing this.
Love to do it again next year.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you everyone for listening and watching.
Yeah, thank you guys.
We will see you next time.
Yeah,
bye everybody.
Bye bye.